Hello, everybody, and welcome back to After Discussing a Murderer. We just finished episode 24. We reached the halfway point in season 2, and we also completed. We reached the halfway point in season. And you would think by now that he would learn to mute his YouTube page, but he hasn't. So we also completed 1 year of the podcast. We've got it all the way. We finished season 1 and we got halfway through season 2 in 1 year. So we're looking on the back half, the back 9, as they say, for the premiere. So I thought we'd have a kind of a cool live, maybe show a couple clips from season 1 just to kind of remember where we started from and how far we've come. I really feel that if we go back and we think about what were we trying to do with the podcast, and I remember some of the early messages that we talked about were, I want to understand the case better. I want to understand it, and if we can all watch it together and we can all kind of break it apart, frame by frame, if we have to, that we'll come away with a clearer understanding. And from a year later, I would say that I have a much clearer understanding of the case. I feel that I've learned. I don't think it would be possible for me to learn as much in the same time frame. I think the format has allowed us to really lay it out week by week in a clear manner, and I'm overall I'm really happy with the contributions everybody has made, and really just the community that we've been involved in. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been here since the beginning and who's picked up along the way. With that said, I think it's most appropriate for me to lead it over to Kelly. Kelly and I were kind of the first to really talk about building this podcast and getting some guests. And so I just hand it over to you, Kelly, if you had any comments to make about the first year of discussing a murder.
Sure. It's definitely been a roller coaster, especially like having to go through all the Brendan Dassey stuff again. As always, it's no stranger to any of us that it just tugs at our hearts. That's not taking away anything from Stephen either. It's just, when you look at the case, it's tragic for everyone involved. But again, it's just, Brendan has that little soft spot, I think, in all of our hearts. Not much more than that. The fact that, you did say that when you brought this idea to me at a year ago, and we tossed back some ideas of what structure we wanted and how we kind of wanted to, project it. And like you said, we kind of wanted to watch it as a team. We wanted to make sure that everyone kind of had their strengths brought into it, with Dr. Silkman and his experiences, and Big Jeff with his, phone network experiences, me in the medical field. We've got Jay Jacks, who is our historian of the case. I think he does absolutely phenomenal. You can ask him something and he will know exactly where to find it almost immediately. You as the host, you have personal experience in, radio, and you construct the formatting of the questions perfectly for us, and you just set the ground tone really easy for us to all come together. And I think for me, I also wanted to just bring a little bit of balance. I think that if we all kind of, I think we all have the same idea, and that is, we want the truth, and we all want the same outcome, and that's justice for Brendan, Stephen, and Teresa, and freedom for the boys. It's just a matter of how we all get there and what avenues we take in terms of research. And that's pretty much it. It's been amazing, and I thank everyone for joining weekly when they have. And it's always great to have people come in like Kath and Brian and Mystic Jinx, who's occasionally come in, and even Bob Bailey, who's made an appearance. It's good to really have that community feel as well. This is why we do these lives, because that's what it's about. It's just coming together as a community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that coming together as a community, and it's been a hell of a ride. I'm gonna throw the comments over to Jack as he is the other panel member that's here with us today. And so, Jack, you joined us about the halfway mark, and Silkman had to be out for a little bit, and you came in and filled the void and stayed on since that. So, yeah, give us some reflection of your time. I mean, you also were a viewer before you were a panel member. I know because you were in the live chats with us. So
Oh yeah, oh
you've been
yeah,
around since the beginning.
yeah. I was glad to help out. Can't really fill Doctor Suckman's shoes because he's just got an extreme amount of scientific knowledge that I just don't have. Hopefully I'll bring a few other things to the case. I've just been around for I've just been around it for so long, and I stuck all this shit in these boxes in my brain. And I try to be able to pull them out. But the thing with being with part of a good group of people from all everywhere, and it's not just this group, but this group is a prime example of being able to not only do your own kind of reading, research, whatever, and whatever interests you in the case, but being willing to listen to other ideas and get input. And it can prompt you to do, other things. And I think it's a really important part. I mean, for me, it's certainly open records. I've really gotten, last couple of years, I've really gotten pretty heavy into that because, that we're still missing so much. Even with everything, the thousands and thousands of pages we have, we're still missing half the photographs. I don't know how many audio files we're missing, but I know we're still missing a bunch. I don't know exactly how many audio files that the DCI have. Jinx and I have talked about it. I've talked about it with other people too, but we don't have a clear idea of that. So for me, and this, this has been great. The podcast. It's been a really good way of reflecting what we already knew and then gaining more as we went along. It's kind of hard to put that into words. It's kind of like having I won't even say a scrapbook, but a summary book that we keep adding to and being smarter every time we move forward. We've learned a little bit more and being able to understand it a little bit better, but we're still missing something. I want to say that again. And this is through no one's fault. It's not our fault. We're trying to get it, but I think that it's been a really good format, not only for us, but for those that have started out listening along, and the audience has grown. I think you've seen that, right? Subscription has grown, and that's what's important. It's not about ego. It's about getting the word out to a larger audience, right?
I couldn't have said it better myself, Jack.
That I think that's what it's always been about for me: getting the word out to a larger audience, educating them with certainly with what we know, speculation, which is fine, as long as you make sure you deem it not speculating or an opinion. So I think with that, it's been really good. I've really enjoyed it. And of course, these lives too, these are a lot of fun.
Yeah, we certainly have had a lot of fun in these lives checking out pictures, which we will get to today. We'll get to picture time in a little bit. We got some pictures to wrap up from last time, and maybe we'll unpack a new role if we have time. But I just wanted the audience to notice how much of a professional Jack was. Did you see how he leaned in and he's like, "We've got a lot done, but there's still more to do." That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how you rope them in. Very good, Jack. I appreciate those comments, and we'll get to picture time in a little bit. Calf, welcome back. I know you've been joining us on these lives, and you've been a viewer, and you've been in the chat since about the beginning, and I think since the beginning. And so, just if you have any comments about where we're at in the podcast, in the case, and welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, and hello everyone listening. Yeah, I don't know. I seem like I've been here forever, but the last 12 months, I don't know. It's been an interesting one. don't know. I don't know about anyone else, but I just feel like we just keep going over old ground over and over and over and really not getting any further. And then just everybody changing their stories in the case. It's just become so confusing. But
I can see that. I get that feeling. I get overwhelmed as well. Like, it's hard to keep things straight.
yeah, and
I'm,
everybody
I'm
changed
still,
their story so many
I'm
times.
I'm still stuck on Ryan though. I've been stuck on him for a long time, and I haven't changed from that.
Yeah, he's up there still with me. As much as I've moved on, I've gone back, moved on, I've gone back. So yeah, definitely on my radar, still never left.
That light, and we covered that in the last couple of weeks. Ryan on the stand talking about that light. That's I have trouble getting past that. I'm not saying that he killed Teresa Hallbach, but something he's lying about something there, and we know it because they proved it, or Zellner proved it through the insurance company. No claim was made, and so that's hard to get past for me. You know, all the other stuff can be circumstantial, like, oh, they used to date, oh, blah blah blah, but that one is and just his demeanor on the stand in general, you know.
I'm with Jack. It's like there's something's missing, you know. There's something's not adding up, but I'm not ever sure what it is. Something's not quite right with it all.
I think there's another story that, in fact, I'm sure there's another story that's not being told. We don't know yet. Well, you may never know the full of it, but
I do love picture time.
Oh, yes. Well, you know, and I think we just got that comment that these after the lives have been really fun, and I'm with you, Kath. I also really enjoy picture time, and
I
would
have loved to have had a live after the Ryan one last week, though. Oh, I would have been all over that.
Well, you got to get in the chat and tell me, because I'll fire this machine up if we have an emergency. You know, if we have to have an emergency live, you know, just let me know.
Well, if we're going down that road, I was going to say maybe I can open up a question to the panel in the chat.
Great.
Okay, so we're talking about, I'm just bouncing off what Kath said, because I think we've all been there. Like, we all do feel like we go around in circles, you get focused on something, and then you find yourself going back, and then you go, you know, forward, and you think, oh yeah, I can put that behind me now. And then you find yourself going back and looping back into where you started. So my question is, in terms of, you know, whether it's Ryan, whether you believe it's Bobby, whether you believe it's anybody else for that matter, my question is, and because it's a MAM, you know, based topic, MAM kind of presents to us a narrative that introduces us to Ryan Hillegas, Bobby Dassey, and that is kind of the main focal point in terms of giving the viewers an idea that there could have been alternative sliding doors, whether that is a personal connection to Teresa, which is your Ryan Hillegas, or whether it was another opportunity situation and inserting, obviously, your Bobby Dassey as a Denny. Again, before I go any further than this is all, and no one here is accusing any of these people of committing any murder. This is just a topic of conversation and opinions, and I just wanted to disclaimer that. But my point is, when you know, we all say there's something missing. Now, a lot of us have done a lot of research beyond Making a Murderer, and we found, you know, Bradley Chex doesn't really get mentioned much in it, like, and we know what a significant part in her life he played, in terms of whether it was an actual affair or whether the romance started after his divorce or the separation. But she was caught up in illegal proceedings about the nude or the, you know, exposing pictures she had taken, and there was like almost like a way triangle with them. So if Making a Murderer had kind of opened it up to other people, do you think that we might not have been so always going back to Bobby and Ryan as our two main ones, because other people were never really given to us in a context with a narrative that we followed to begin with. Because I feel like a lot of people has the potential to have been always a great alternative, but they just never made the cut in Making a Murderer. And that's why people don't really explore them when they actually are really interesting to this day.
I mean, I've said it before. I've brought this up probably on this podcast, but the question that I would answer your question with a question. I'm sorry that that's so annoying to do to someone, but had Bradley Check and his story been included in Netflix, do you think there would be a bigger angle of people headed and researching Bradley Check? And the answer to me is yes. And I think that demonstrates your question, Kel, that, had other narratives been presented in MAM, people would have seen and perceived it differently. And I think that Bradley Check is the best example I can think of for that.
Yeah,
definitely other ones.
Yeah, okay.
There's definitely other ones too. For me, just to interject a little bit, for being an American, I know it. I don't know if Jeff sees it this way, and certainly I'm not sure that outside of the U.S. and this is no slight on anyone, but can understand what I'm saying. And this, for a lot of people viewing Making a Murderer, even with its tone overall, Carrie, it introduced so many people here. I'm not talking about in the world. I'm not about here in the States, to this underside of the justice system. They couldn't believe that this is how things can go, and sometimes, and probably more often than not, do for people that are poor versus a county or a state that wants somebody arrested and jailed for whatever reason. I really think it exposed it. And this is not even talking about the other people that probably should have been a little bit more heavily involved. So that's number one. Number two, I'll tell you somebody else that's really interesting that really didn't make the cut at all. I'm not even sure that they were even played. That's Alex Quadrini. Everybody knows who Alex Quadrini is, right?
That's right.
Kath knows. Cal knows.
Murderer, is that right?
That's right. And he left a message for Teresa on her answering machine. That's really interesting. So yeah, I can't say that you're wrong, Kat.
Up a couple of alarm bells if we were doing an investigation, wouldn't it, Jack?
It would for me as an investigator. But I don't think Kel's asking the wrong question at all. I think that, for me, because of what was presented, what we see, and of course, a lot of what we see at trial, you get a guy like, and again, I'm not saying Ryan did anything, because I just find him really suspicious because of the number of inaccuracies or outright what I call lies we're told. I don't believe what he said on the stand. I don't believe a lot of it. So it comes back to the question of, why did he do it? Why would you get up on the stand and say these things when you're thinking, well, you've left kind of part of your story out. You didn't tell the fact that you called Singular Customer Service 3 times before you were able to get into Teresa's phone records. You didn't get that out there, but you did. That's exactly what happened. For some reason, I don't know why they didn't include that, right?
Yeah, like right from the get-go, Ryan says himself that him and Scott weren't treated as suspects. Bradley Chetz wasn't treated as a suspect either, and he just got away with saying he slept all day, so that was good enough for them. And then, of course, Ryan injecting himself left, right, and centre into the case, having all that information on hand before law enforcement even arrive. And I never could get it out of my head why they never treated her house as a crime scene. Like,
Agreed.
What made them so sure she never made it home? And then, of course, within hours on the 3rd, there's just people in and out, trampling the scene. So,
plus the fact that I think it was Poggle that went over there and talked to, I think it was Poggle, talked to Jolene Bain.
Yeah.
and he goes into her chest and pulls out those photos that Kel was talking about of this relationship, this 3-way relationship that developed. There's a lot of weird shit that went on there that it's like, why didn't you look at this guy? Or even the wife.
Yeah, in most cases, they look at the if it's a woman, they look at the current husband, an ex-boyfriend, any men in the woman's life. That's usually the trail that they go down initially, but
That's
they
right.
didn't in this case.
No.
It was handled so badly right from the get-go. Ryan, I don't know whether I went there morning, noon, or night, and and all these things that he says that, and he just got away with just saying whatever he wanted. Like, I don't know how that works.
Well, and then we get into the 20 or 22, whatever it was, dropped calls. We don't know what they are. May not be anything, but there's something that really appeared out on his phone record out of the blue. Really, he didn't really have any other time frame that I know of that's like that in his call record. It's really strange.
I think that's one of the reasons why we just keep going around and around and around, because we're only ever getting statements, evidence, fingers pointed at someone from the Averys, when in actual fact nothing's probably happened there, and that's where it actually did happen and who's done it and what went down is completely off that property altogether. And
that's right.
Any information that we could have obtained would have been from the beginning, which law enforcement didn't do their jobs properly.
And that's where it becomes the frustrating part. As Kel said, we're going round and round, and I don't disagrray. I mean, I've been all day today on open records request, all day, one way or another. This way, it's like Jesus.
Yeah, it's definitely Brad would have been a really interesting one if I think he would have made the cut for Mam. I think that would have really kind of, I think he would have been a top favorite, to be quite honest, for people, because he admits that he sent her a message throughout the day. His alibi is sleeping. There's this 3-way, love triangle. There's a court case involved. We've heard Kath bring this up that, we've got Teresa's own friends that pulled one of the officers aside and said, listen, I think it was Jolene, wasn't it, Kath? Teresa's got herself involved in something she doesn't quite understand. You really need to check out this guy called Bradley. And, in the real world, who knows you better? Your friends, your immediate people in your circle. When women
that was
together,
Jolene.
we talk. Yeah,
that was Jolene Bain.
Yeah. And that, and she's alerting the officers to really check this guy out. So, then we've got, there's a few things. There was another one that I used to think was quite interesting, although there's nothing to kind of, do any links. I just thought he was a very interesting one. And I think he does make Mam, if I remember, but that was Tom Pierce as well. There's a business relationship there. He was asked if he had any sexual relationship with her. There's the whole on Teresa's planted on her own writing. She writes biz paperwork. And then we have him say that every day that, she would come frequently, her normal business day would be to come over to the studio and do her paperwork. She also took a lot of paperwork home, but she did frequently come. And then we have, Teresa's own diary entries where she says she's sick to death of having to drive to Green Bay every day to have to do work, and it's such an inconvenience. And then you've got, the fact that he was calling at midnight on the 3rd, and, maybe, of course, it could be non-nefarious. He was just really concerned for his friend. But then you have that option that people do insert themselves in for reasons to keep in front of the case. And so that, that's what I mean. There's so many other people that could have, if they had made that kind of impact with what we know now in that documentary, I think that the balance of, you know, whether it became a Bobby versus Ryan kind of battle of the Denny's, I think there would have been, it wouldn't have been as simple as that, in my opinion.
I agree, because if you add in the narrative of Teresa was involved with taking risque pictures with a married couple who then later got divorced, and she had a sexual relationship with that man, that is some pretty salacious like stuff that would get people going, oh my God, let's look into him. And that's just how I feel. Again, not accusing Brad Check of anything. This is more about perception and what we see through a documentary. But I do think that that's a pretty powerful scenario.
Yeah, with the Jolene Bain, she tells Pagel, I think it is, that Teresa had a relationship with Brad, but she had ended that sexual side of it because she found him weird.
Yep.
Oops, I just muted myself. And it was Amber Kuick, I think how you say her last name. She called in the tip line twice, once in the morning and then again in the afternoon. And she states to look into Bradley. Her and a group of friends are discussing it throughout the day. And yeah, she said that that she was concerned that
And
about Teresa and Bradley.
Yeah, and Bradley Check characterizes their friendship as my best friend, right? He calls Teresa Halbach his best friend, but she described him as weird. Like, we just got to put it, you know, maybe this is all out of context. We do have to remember that, you know what I mean? So, and I think I just want to bring up one point because it's crossing my mind. Everyone can't be guilty, right? Like, yes, there's maybe suspicious stuff in Brad, but Brad can't do it, and Bobby did it, and Ryan did it, and so it's like not everybody. So everybody has a little suspicion about them, but everybody can't have done it, right? So we have to just keep that in mind, and I just try to remind myself, like, if you're wrong about this, this is just a coincidence.
The main thing that was said about Bradley that Amber said in the call was, she said, mainly because we know he has some things that are obviously right and wrong decisions that she doesn't fully understand. So that's what Amber says about Teresa and Brad.
It is. It's an interesting call to make to law enforcement about someone. And
right and wrong decisions. You just don't know how to take that. What could that even mean?
Right. That's right. It is an odd statement.
Either way, there's something not quite right with it. She's concerned, and there's right and wrong decisions being made, and Teresa doesn't fully understand, obviously, the repercussions.
But, that's another thing that we have to always remember about the case, because we're spoiled at this point. There was so much that was unknown at the time. I'm talking about dispatch calls. I'm talking about radio transmissions and so many other things that, we really kind of take for granted. The filmmakers didn't know about it, number one. A lot of the stuff was never presented to the jury, never. So there's this disconnect, that we see it, we've been able to see it, and we can come to a, probably a whole lot better, more informed decision than they ever could, because so much they never saw, which I think, again, that leads into our criminal justice system and how it really works. It's not necessarily about the truth at all, right? It's what story gets presented to a jury, how it gets sold, even to the media. So that's another aspect of it.
So I think it's fair that we all concluded the fact that, if Making a Murderer had presented alternatives, what we know now, it might have changed the Denny pool in the public. And we focus then purely outside of the Avery Savage Yard, because I think we all agree that none of us believe that the crime happened on that Avery Savage Yard. Something happened once she left. I think it's all very fair to assume that. So I'm going to pose another question. And again, this is not me trying to stir the pot, or it's not me trying to,
oh, come on, stir the pot.
Accuse anyone, but it's bringing the balance. We looked at it from outside the Avery Savage Yard. Now let's look at, was there potential other Denny's or people on the Avery Savage Yard on the 31st, even customers that had
Martinez,
like other that could have also, if presented in Making a Murderer, could have outweighed that balance that we were left with.
And you're staying within the boundaries, basically, of what Dean and Jerry were putting on their list, right, Cal? Like that's basically correct. What they were saying. Is the people that were on that salvage yard that day who could have potentially crossed paths with Teresa Halbach becomes an automatic suspect.
That's
or
correct.
At least an interest.
Yeah. So in their Denny, that's what they presented. They weren't going for the motive side of it. In fact, they argued in one of their proceedings, in one of their motions, that they didn't think it was fair. And I have to semi-agree. I think it's not fair in a sense that, that the prosecution doesn't have to give a motive for a crime, but it's a defense that if you want to point the finger, you have to have these three prongs. However, I'm not going to challenge that, because that's the justice system, and I have to accept that's why they've made this rule. It's part of the layers of the onion in terms of the structure of what the Denny argument is. But, that's what they kind of did. They were focusing on everyone who was on the Avery Savage Yard that day. And that was from people that resided there to people that were guests because they were clients that were doing something in terms of buying a part or was speaking to Chuck or whoever was there. So, we even had Robert Fabian, who ends up, being a big part of in a sense, the trial, because doesn't he testify in Stephen Avery's trial that there was a fire and such, and that he was a witness to that. So, we've got all these other people that could have been, if they had, again, presented in Making a Murderer with what we know now, could they have tipped the balance of the Denny pool?
I know who my number one is on the yard. I'm not talking about Bobby. You know who it is, Cal. With the extensive list.
Yes.
Well, and let me, if I know where you guys are going there, this is what I would have preferred to see KZ point the finger at Chuck than point the finger at Bobby. Let's be real. I think he makes a stronger Denny, except the fact that he's not a person who said, I saw her walk towards Steven's house, right? Like that's why he's not, that's why Bobby is in this, right? But I would have been much more comfortable having her point the finger at Chuck. I'm just saying.
Of course. I mean, of course. His incident list is long, and he's an angry man. He's a very angry person. He has been in his life. I don't know about now, but certainly in his life, he has been extremely angry. He's had numerous incidents over the course of going back to the early 80s. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to consider that, but we've been through this before, and you guys, I urge you to go check out the video. We did a video discussing the suspects, and Chuck does make an appearance on the list for these reasons, because he was present, because of his past. He's combined that with some strange statements made in his interviews, and makes a much better, to me. But then again, let's not forget, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not Kathleen Zellner. I'm not familiar with how to do this, right? So it just, from my eyes, from my prism, from my point of view, I would have seen Chuck as a stronger Denny. Um, and how is the Bobby following her scenario, which is the one that KZ lays out? How is that any different from Chuck followed her and stopped her, or Martinez followed her and stopped her, or the German followed her? Do you see where I'm going? I think you can see what I'm saying.
Yeah, but what about if the law enforcement arrive to Teresa's residence on the 3rd after Karen calls in? If Ryan hadn't got onto her laptop and printed out her phone records by the time they arrived, if he didn't have that information, do you think the case would have gone a different direction?
Possible.
Like, would her house have become a crime scene?
It's also possible. And I was just actually going to say, we can't forget about this law enforcement effect. Think about it. Think about, and we weren't there. And again, we're missing some things that we'll probably never ever know. And I mean the effect of what were these cops talking about behind the scenes that we don't know about in terms of how this was going to go. We know that Bobby's name was being talked about somewhere around the 5th. How did that maybe turn their dial to go this way or that way? But that's a really good scenario you just talked about there, Calf, about if Ryan hasn't had that list printed out. That's another thing too. Him getting into her account, they didn't bat an eye at that. That's a federal offense. You don't mess with somebody's phone stuff. You just don't do it.
Yeah, that's right. But see, they would have needed a warrant for that, and that takes time. So,
what better
way to have it handed to you when you arrive?
Exigent circumstances, they could have gotten it pretty quick, but yeah, it was still taking time. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then straight away they made it about a work day, and as you know, they're at the Zippers that night. They're at a call by over at the Averys. And it all just gets tunnel vision basically from there, I think.
Well, that was another one, the Zipper incident from beginning to end. I don't care how many times you read it, it's just weird. It's just weird. You read that statement, that whole scenario from beginning to end, and it's got strangeness written all over it. And I don't think that's because of the region. Jeff, you lived there. I don't know, are people that way there? It's so strange to me.
You know what I was talking about with a few others the other day was the fact about how George had said, oh, if she'd come back here, my dogs would have eaten her from head, from toes up, or whatever his statement was. But then
not like the biggest red flag of all time. Yeah. Sorry, Kath. I mean, how is that not the biggest red flag of all time? My dog would have eaten her. What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, but then you don't then you've got to ask yourself, if you were Teresa, would you be walking around the back there with dogs that are prepared to eat you, according to George? Also, too, when the cops are calling from dispatch, or when they're outside the house trying to get in and they won't let them in, you don't ever hear any dogs barking, or where are these dogs?
Right.
If you were Teresa and you're going to just wander around the back and just appear, like Joe Allen said?
Yeah, that's weird too. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's no way I'd be going around there, but that's just me.
So yeah, it's a fair question what Kel said, though. I mean, if they would expanded this whole scenario, I don't know. I have to think about, and I really haven't thought about it in those terms. What did Maura and Laura consider when they were doing this? And I know they talked about it. I know they did, because we can see that in a lot of the Colburn depositions, right, and the material we got there. So there was discussion. We just were not privy to how they. I mean, were they just kind of literally following along with some of the more key players in it? That's a really good question. It opens up a whole nother avenue there, really.
Well, I think, one thing that's important to remember is that Mam is not going to show us everything, and that there's only so much time in an episode, and it's either you cover Brad Check 100% or you can't cover him at all. You can't just give a couple pieces of that, that story. Plus, as you said, I don't think that they were aware of him at the time anyway. But you can't get everything in, and so
No.
there is that fairness to give the filmmakers that they can't tell every story about every interaction Teresa Halbach ever had that might have been relevant to this, right? So anyway, yeah, so it is a great question, and I think we can continue to talk about that one as we move forward as well. Anybody have anything to say on that before we press on to the next?
What are you saying? On to the next, as Big Jeff would say.
That's right. We got to, you got to give a shout out to Big Jeff when you can. Big Jeff, he usually doesn't join us on the lives. He's a busy man, and I appreciate the time that he does settle in with us. So shout out to Big Jeff. Appreciate.
We love you, Big Jeff.
Yeah, we do. We really do.
I was just going to bounce off a comment that was in the chat here.
Cool.
And I think it's interesting. The reason why I put forward those kind of, scenarios in terms of how it would have affected the viewers and how the community kind of, branched out in terms of research and where we're at now. And even Kathleen, whether it would have opened up more doors for her in terms of an avenue when she took on the case. I've said it for a while now, and I just want to kind of repeat it. And I think this, if it's Trevin, apologies if I've butchered your name there, but they kind of outline this, but I'm just going to format it in my own language here. But I think, this is a personal opinion, I really hope that it has nothing to do with anyone on the Avery Savage yard, the crime itself, or was a participation in the crime, because I fear as long as you keep that crime on that Avery Savage yard, it'll always come back to bite Stephen Avery and at this point of time, Brendan Dassey, because I can always see the strategy changing from the state to add additional family members than to trade them out with others. So I think the only way that in this, my whole heart, I really feel where we're at, the only way this case would ever move forward is if we found that the killer had no association with the family, that their DNA gets found like the Gregory Allen, where it should not be, and it cannot be explained, and therefore it unravels everyone and everything, because you couldn't explain how the connection would be with this person and Stephen. While you have Stephen's forensic DNA on file in the courts, recognized as a fact, anyone that is a part of him will become a part of the crime versus eliminating him. I hope I kind of said that.
The unindicted co-defendant.
Yeah, the co-conspirator. So you kind of have to, I really hope that for the boys' sake, it had nothing to do with anyone on that Avery Savage yard, because I can't see this case moving forward if it was, because they'll only get added to the crime versus, taken out and then replacing. Again, my opinion.
Makes sense.
Interesting. I think there was a clip that I wanted to share, and maybe I'll drop a couple clips throughout the show just to break it up a little bit. But there was a clip that I'm gonna drop and bring us way back. We're gonna go way back to the beginning of the podcast here. I'm gonna pull it up now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to take us a little time traveling right here. headed back all the way to like the first or second week of the podcast, and we were talking about Jean Couché. So I'm gonna mute my mic. I hope that works, and then I should be able to play this clip. Let me know if you can't hear it.
I can hear it.
The guy's name is Rap Grappler from Reddit. And what he did was he asked himself the question as to whether or not the sketch that Jean Couché made was actually a sketch that he independently envisioned out of his own mind, or whether or not he traced the picture of Stephen, perhaps using a light box or perhaps overlaying a piece of paper on a computer screen. And what you're looking at now is a sort of an overlay graphic that he did, where he took the quote unquote Jean Couché sketch, and he's overlaying that as a transparency onto the mugshot of Stephen Couché from the Judy Dvorak, from the Sandra Morris arrest that happened earlier in that year. So I mean, if you just look at how the eyes just are sort of overlapping, and look at the lines on the right hand side of the mouth, right? How the lips are exactly overlapping, and as Dr. Silkman pointed out earlier, how the hairline is, at the top and around the beard, how that's perfectly framing the exact aspect.
Undeniable. It's
Wow,
absolutely.
that's traced.
I remember that episode. I remember it.
It's baffling. It's unbelievable, and I think what I got from that clip is like, there's not just like one detail in this case that's absurdly like stench, that it's almost every detail in this case has some layer of that, where it's like, yeah, but you had Sherry Culhane, yeah, but Jean Couché, yeah, and it just continues, and I think that was just taking us all the way back to the beginning of that. But yeah, what do you guys think of that clip?
That's really great. I'm gonna add one more before Captain Kell talked, but one more thing about Jean Couché and his infamous framing of the brain sketch here. It's the only one he ever did. The only one.
Only one, and he got an award for it, and he framed it,
and took it home, put it in his office,
which did become, I believe, evidence in the civil trial. Is that right? That they made him haul it back into court.
I think so, or at least they
took a picture of it or something, because deposition, that's for sure.
I think they took a photo of it.
So I mean, when Big Jeff, when he says it all goes back to 1985, I can see where that it makes so much sense, right? We look at that and we go, God, they were after this guy at every turn. At every turn, they had something. And let's not get into Gregory Allen yet, but we might have to later, Jack, Calf, and Cal.
Well, that's a whole nother can of worms there, and it's a huge can. And yeah, I'm like you, we can't get into that right now.
I think you're right. So, unless you guys had anything else, we can move into some pictures that we did last time. Unless you guys had another question from the chat or anything. I don't know if Jack had, if you had those locked and loaded from last time. I think we still had some to continue that we were looking at.
I've got them. Well, I don't have it shared yet. I've got it pulled up on another screen here, but I haven't loaded anything. While you're looking there, I'll go ahead and start getting them loaded, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll try to find a couple more clips as we go along, and just we'll look at a few pictures, and maybe I'll share a clip from season 1, and we'll just kind of have a little have a live celebration of 1 year. Here we go, and the pictures are coming up now. So can you remind us where we left off, Jack? Which role we're in?
Yeah, this is some photos that they originated from. I think it was Pete Moss, which led into finding yours. Actually, did a lot of legwork here. This person, Evan Christian, uh, he put up a ton of photographs that we're not exactly sure where he got them, but it doesn't matter. He got them. Photos, they're evidence, they're forensic evidence, and they're part of a project that got put online. And so Yoris visited himself, and he grabbed them. He grabbed these photographs. They're just different tag numbers, as you'll see. Actually, I'll back out of this one because this is where we left off. All these are evidence tag numbers.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, but some of these only have a few. There's not very many.
Yeah, sure. They're just
some of. I mean, like this one we're going to start on. It's got. Yeah, I mean, there's like 3 in this one. This is a tub of unidentified material, suspected to 130 bone multiple piles. I don't know, without going and looking, I don't know where 7924 is from, but I'm guessing this came from the quarry. I don't know, probably, but let's see if we can see what this says.
I can read it. Just give me a second. Descendant remains human. Calumet County, Dr. Leslie, date 11/10, and scratched out 11/11. That's funny, huh? Yeah, change the date. No big deal.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, just pencil that in there because we're professionals, right?
There you go.
Because usually, I'm sorry, but usually when we change a date on an official document, you have to initial it. That's kind of the rule.
That's right. That's the way I was taught.
Who changed it? Who changed it? You have to put your initials on there and take ownership of that change.
One line, and you initial it. And of course, this is another whatever it says: cranial and dental 11/12, so 79/24. And then, of course, some fragments. Yeah, that's I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's I don't know what they are. I can't identify.
I mean, it's too hard to know, especially because like it's so burnt to the degree that you can't tell if those grooves are from the burn or from breaking. But these were smashed. I mean, look at that. Those bones were smashed. They weren't just burnt. Burning doesn't break your skull into small little pieces. I'm sorry to be, so crass, but
what number is the middle one that says it's dental?
It's a 79/24.
79/24.
That's interesting.
I'm just looking at the numbers of the bones that were given back to the Hallbucks, and 79/24 is not one of them.
Wow. So this still exists.
And what about the one before that?
Shit.
What number?
79/24. But see, here's the thing. You can have like 79/24 could have multiple fragments within 79/24. So it might not just be 1 or 2 bones. It can be a bunch of bones, and that happened throughout a lot of these tags. If you watch as we go through, I'm sure they'll probably show more.
Unidentified material suspected to be bone, multiple pieces.
Yeah.
But if that is a dental bone, then there's something. I mean, there's your DNA. I mean, all you're going to find out is whether it's Teresa Hallbuck or not. But that's not going to get Stephen Avery out of prison. But
if it survived the fire,
Right. I mean, if it's not Teresa Hallbuck, yeah, that gets Stephen Avery out of prison, absolutely. But I don't know if that's...
Yeah, but like they didn't they get a dental guy in to say that it matched perfectly with hers? Was that the fragments found in Stephen's pit?
Similarly, yeah, like he glued together.
Yeah, well, if they're saying it's her, why didn't they give it back to her family?
Interesting.
That's a good question. And then 79. The next one is 7925.
Let's make note of
Like we
that,
gotta-
Calf. Let's put that and keep that in our back pocket, huh?
I see this
Yeah,
one's got like 12 or 13. Collected 1110 dental structures, one human bone frag, and then wood. This one's on, that says 11. Is that 1116? As far as I can zoom in on it. I thought that said 1110 up here. Maybe that's supposed to be maybe that top of that 0 got cut off and it's supposed to be a 6 up there. Anyway, moving on. The next one in this group looks like the same photo, different angle maybe. And you can see inside this bag, there's at least 2 containers here. There's the one with orange, then you got one down below it. Mm-hmm. They've separated them into these pill boxes here.
Something frag, and then the word wood. What is that? Dental structures collected on the 10th. See, now look at that. Is that a 10 or an 11? Can you zoom in on that date? Because remember, they were changing dates from the 10th to the 11th, and this one's in marker. You can't just collected.
As far as I can zoom in.
Yeah, that's 10.
Oh, okay.
That's the 10.
No.
And it goes 18 over in the left-hand corner, 16 in the right-hand corner.
Yep.
There you go. Thank you. This is why we're a good team, because we got...
Yeah, because like one says when it's collected, one says when it went to Eisenberg, and I think that's DOG on the left, is it?
I think so, yeah. This is another same bag, looks like.
So that's number 2467. 24.
Yeah, it's 7925 is the property tag.
70 what, sorry?
7925. You can sit up here in the upper right up here.
Yeah, that wasn't given back either.
And then this is probably one of the cartons from inside, I'm guessing. Can't really read anything. And I have to apologize, but these photos are not really high grade. They're more lower quality. We got what we got. Glad to get them, I guess. And then this next one looks like another side of the same box. I can't read that right there. It's got a description there, but it bends around, so we're not going to be able to read it. And then another box in here, I think. This is dated 11/15/05.
It's got a 11/11/12 and 11/12.
It's got all kinds of dates on here, don't they? Yeah, 11/11, 11/12. So it looks like different people have done whatever.
Why are you gonna open it up so much? We need to know what's in there. There's definitely shown some interest in it, right? They're not just wrapping it up. They're wrapping it up, opening it, and then opening it. Oh,
there we go. Is that's not the? Oh, okay.
Are these the dentals? The dental structure that they're called?
No,
They do kind of look like teeth. You know, teeth has a root to it, right? Like.
Oh, that looks like a tooth there on the left.
Kind of does. You know, it looks like candy corn. You know what I'm saying? That same shape.
You hate candy corn.
Yeah, it's horrible for your teeth too. Oh, and now we got a better picture. We can tell it's not teeth.
Almost looks like wood, but I don't know that. Could be small bones that have been broken up. I don't know though.
I don't know that any. How can anybody look at that and go, "That's"?
What item number is that, Jack?
Still 7925.
7925.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, as far as I know, Jeff, the only way that they can tell, you know, is Eisenberg would have had to cut it across and saw what the structure is on the inside. We need Dr. Soapman here to walk people through that, but that's, as far as I know, that's it. Maybe Kel knows for Calf. As far as I know, that's the only way that they can really tell from this juncture. Looks like more of the same. This is the 4 that we saw earlier. And then more of the same from prior photo. The 4 again. A little bit tighter photograph, but it's blurred out just a little bit. Same thing. Same 4. Here we go. So those are dental structures, according to this.
Oh, look at that. Nice work, Jack. So that
Well,
was what we were looking at.
Yeah, it's included. So,
But those were never given back to the Hall box. Is that right?
that's what Calf found in the list.
That's some top crow type stuff right there, Calf.
Cool. But I don't know how legit the list is, and I'm not sure where I got it. So just
Well, you can look at you can look at the CASO investigator report 1114, 1115. It tells everything, all the property tags that they went through.
Yeah, I just seem to have it says human bones returned to the hallmarks. Someone has made it, but I don't know who and I don't know where I got it from. But it just sort of says the item number, the location, and a description of each fragment. So I'm guessing, but like at the end of the day, if they found that fragment of a tooth and it did come back to, well, they had a dentist come in and say, yeah, I'm not sure about that either. Put an X-ray and say, look, it fits perfectly. Yeah, I'm not buying that.
Not the degree of how destroyed it was. It was rough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that didn't even get given back.
This is 7926. Maybe one of you guys can read that. I cannot. Something
unidentified.
Yeah, unidentified.
And then it says unknown
material, probably.
Yeah, unknown.
Yeah, that's exactly what it says.
Unknown material. And then it had another word on the next line.
It said
there. Unknown material. Is that charred?
That does look like the word charred. Absolutely. 2 RR, and then the ED is kind of behind the label.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charred.
There we go.
Keep cold. Oh, really?
Keep cold?
Uh-oh.
What do they got in there? That looks like a thing of
vegetable spread. If you guys remember, there was material that came back from the FBI. It says keep refrigerated.
Okay.
I don't know what it was.
Well, DOJ had it, and then Calumet County had it, and then the crime lab had it, and then Eisenberg had it on the 16th. Or are those just the case numbers? That they're like reference numbers? Like this is the DOJ case number, this is the Calumet case number, this is the Wisconsin crime lab case number for reference?
Yeah. Yeah, this is the crime lab number, Calumet. That's right.
That's right.
Or keep cold.
Because there's 3 different agencies that are all involved. Keep cold. What is that?
I don't know.
It's a big container. It's bigger than I thought in the first picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a casserole size.
Okay. I just found what that is.
Okay, what is it?
It is Okay, so I prepared the contents of tag 7926 for transfer to Laura Goini. That's as good as that last name's getting, sorry. At the FBI's mitochondrial DNA laboratory in Virginia. Presents were 5 bone fragments and muscle tissue. So that would be why it needed to be kept cold, because of the muscle tissue.
Actual tissue. Okay.
That's BZ. That's BZ. That's BZ.
Has that ever been returned to the Hull box?
No. Not according to the list I have, but then I did say I don't know.
You might not have an accurate list. Okay, yeah, we need to find an accurate list of that.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, confirm it anyway.
The largest of the bone fragments appear to have come from a human fibula shaft and measures approximately 59.2 millimeters in length. The remaining 4 splintered fragments range in the form of 12.5, 11 mil. The largest piece of muscle tissue is measured approximately 61.3 millimeters by 30.0 millimeters. There are 2 other pieces of tissue that measured approximately 45.1 times 10.5 and a 36 by a 13 at their thickest dimension. Other smaller and thinner muscle tissue strands are also present. Strands.
Do you guys remember, is this item BZ the one that was found out in that other quarry, like on the northeast side of the salvage yard? Is that correct?
Yeah.
That this piece was found way off in no man's land on the other side, not Redon's quarry, the other quarry I believe that this is where it was found.
No, I think BZ was found by kind of the after the fact, from the after they had done their sifting and so forth, by Reimer. I think that's right. I'd have to go back and read the report. It's been too long, but it was it was a little bit late to the party, as I recall.
Right. Okay. I'm going to look into that one as well.
The 15th of the 11th. Transferred the 3 items detailed on the Division of the Criminal Investigation Property Receipt, Dane County Coroner Morgue Facility, photographed each package, blah, blah, blah. Then it says they tagged 7925 was a pillbox containing charred material. Contents included 10 small pieces of wood, 1 small triangular piece of bone, 3 dental structures. All items were placed back in a small box for examination by Donald Smiley. I called Dr. Smiley on his cell phone and let him know that additional teeth were found and returned to the box to the morgue cooler for later pickup.
There you go.
And then he goes on about the muscle tissue. And to me, that's it's the first time reading that, because I thought there was only ever 1 tooth fragment found and 1 piece of bone with tissue on it. But according to this report, there's actually quite a bit of muscle tissue, varying in different sizes found, and more than 1 fragment of tooth. And I wonder what the outcome of all that was.
It's always sketch to me for the fact that they found one usable fleshy sample to get DNA out of. That's always, because it's like what we go back to and say, it's always like they just got it. It's just a miracle, always a man miracle for them, right?
Yeah, if you guys remember, this photo's been around for a minute. And I think this was actually one of the photos that made it into Kraft's book. I think that's right. Pamphlet, not book. Pamphlet.
It's a pamphlet.
This is also same thing as BZ. And if I'm not mistaken, this piece right here, I think that's part of the tibia. I think that's right. Because I swear I've seen a photo somewhere, and this one's marked by somebody. Maybe I'm misremembering. Too much information overload. I'm calling it overload.
It happens to all of us.
Same thing. Yeah, here it is. I'm pretty sure that this right here is supposed to be a tibia, part of the tibia.
That's what they claim, yeah.
Well, it's kind of gruesome to think about. And, you know, these are photos that most people haven't seen. I have. I've seen them a number of times. And, you know, if we're going to take, I guess, you know, if you're really, really interested in the case, I guess this is just part of it, right? I try not to think of it as being too gruesome, but, you know, I also think about, you know, Teresa lost her life, you know, and it's hard, you know, it's hard no matter what. Hard. Anyway, yeah, here we go. I was calling it, I guess it's tibula, not tibia. Tibula.
Well, there's a tibula and a fibula, and I think you just misspoke.
Well, I said we need Dr.
Is
Sutton.
the smaller of the two. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't embarrass myself with my lack of knowledge here. Just move on.
Okay, so that's 79. Next one here. Is this where we were at? No, this is the next one. More small pill boxes. Can't read that. I think this says material, but that's all I can see on that. Maybe we'll get a clearer. That's a little bit better photo. DCI.
Oh, hey, Jack, can I interrupt you?
Please.
Let's watch another clip.
Do it. These ain't going anywhere.
I got another clip, and that is this is a golden clip. I mean, you can't tell the story without just a little bit of Pam Sturm.
Oh boy.
Just put it back to the beginning where Pam calls in for me, please, and I'll address it when I get to it.
Hi, this is Pam Sturm. I'm on the search for Teresa Halbach, and we have found a RAV4.
Is there any license plates on it?
No plates on it, but it's a little covered up. It's weird. It's covered up.
Okay. Can you get to the front of the car?
Yeah, I will. I can't find a VIN number. Is that okay if I go in the car?
No, do not go in the car. Do not touch
Stop.
the car.
Stop.
Stay on the outside of the
She says, and I quote, "Is it okay if I go inside the car?" Did you guys all hear that?
Yeah.
Sure did. What makes her think that it's open?
Exactly.
Good question. Good question.
Oh man, just listening to her, guys, like just listening to that part, it just sounds so like, I don't know, it just sounds so out of place. Like it's almost set up, like they knew that this call was going to take place, and she was talking it up for the recording or something. I don't know. It always has struck me weird. But Kel brings up a really good point. How did she know? Did she know? Did she try to open it?
Is that where you were going with that, Cal?
I think Kel's
I think it was.
she'll be right back, I think, unless I'm mistaken. I think Kel's going to be right back. It's sorry to do that, like to play a clip where Kel is talking and then she's not here to talk about it. I apologize. That was on me. She's going to be right back. But
yeah, I thought she was talking live.
No. Let's continue, and then
I'm here.
We'll let her.
I'm here.
Oh, here she is.
I'm here. Sorry. Yeah. If you would have, if the clip kept going, that's where I go with it. I'm like, if she's just been told not to go into the car, she's saying before that, we go back and look at the transcript, that she had her daughter had attempted to get in there. So why is she now asking to go in it if she knows it's locked? Exactly. So it comes big, like the chicken or the egg, which came first? Was she trying to get into the car? And if she was trying to get into the car when he told her not to do it, then why is her daughter then still trying to, against the orders, to step away? Or had they already tried to get into it and they knew it was unlocked, because now she's asking, can she go into it? Because why would you ask to go into it if you've already tried and you know you can't get in?
That's right. If you know it's locked, why are you asking if you can go in? So great, Kel. Nice find, by the way, way back Oh God, way back in I can't even tell you what episode that was. But just listening to Pam and that setup voice, and it's just I don't know. I'm like stomping my feet while I'm listening to that, guys.
And her awful testimony. Awful.
Absolutely. Well, maybe I'll drop some more clips as we go, but I will hand the controls back over to Jack, and we will resume where we were just looking at those pictures. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, it'd help if I unmute my microphone when I talk. Yeah, this is 7928. Yeah, there's only 6 pictures. I don't think we're going to get much from this. 7928. Yeah, I can't really tell. It's a pillbox, obviously, but I don't know what it is. Kath may have it handy there where she can actually see. We're not getting anything from this. Just a bunch of numbers. So you can't read it.
What? Oh, it's got 7928
8.
on the top.
Yep. Yep. I'm guessing it's some kind of little fragments of some kind, obviously. Find anything?
Not yet. I'll keep looking.
All right, I'll keep going. And this is 7936. 111005. I'm guessing it's at 1641. Unknown material. Suspected burnt bone. South of Red House. Interesting. And same photograph, basically.
It's more Tupperware, huh?
Well, I mean, yeah. Can't really see anything from it. There's a little bit of material.
Tagged as human bone. I mean, that's what Eisenberg is saying.
Yep, 7936 human bone. And this one's dated the 13th. And this is the occipital defect. Okay, so this is one of the fragments. Apparently, that got taken into. Yeah, I guess that's it. I can't blow that up anymore, but you can see where my mouse is right there.
Little bevel.
That beveling, yep.
And that one too, you can see. Yeah.
Yep. So that's 7936.
Well, that was a folder with not a whole lot of action there, Jack.
Yeah, like I said, here. Some of these don't have many. Okay. We got some dog poop coming.
Dog stool. We can kind of review them, I guess. I don't know if we. Okay, well there you go.
Right, where's Jinx at when you need her? Yeah,
dog stool. I mean, I guess if you think the dog could have, but isn't that funny? Didn't we just say that before? Zipper was the one that said his dog would eat her, but they're checking Avery's dog's poop.
Yeah, and they found some off the property as well that they collected.
I just find that funny because you can FOIA that.
And let's see, yeah, same thing. Don't see that was in that bag there. And they got the biohazard. Watch it, guys. You're going to get some dog poop on you. I don't know. Okay, that's the can. Okay, all right. And then, yeah. This is 37, so let's move on. We're moving to 7942. 4 photos. Looks like more human bones. Or more bones. Yep.
North end of burn pit, south of garage.
Yep.
Let's see the condition of these bones. Just remember, these were found in the burn pit that were burned severely in this giant inferno of a fire. Let's see what we get.
Okay, so 7928 was the pillbox and some charred 7928 Kament County transferred. Okay, so pillbox with charred fragments, I think it says.
Yeah.
Charred marked? No, charred. Oh, it's a hard word to read. Charred material. Pillbox with charred material. That was that one, 7928. 7926 was a paper bag with charred material, and 7925 pillbox with charred material. So they've pretty much named all 3 items different tag numbers.
Isn't that funny, TJ? But no cadaver dogs hit on the burn pit.
Nope.
No. Or Stevens.
I mean, come on, folks. It doesn't pass the smell test. Here you go.
No.
This is what this burning inferno produced, folks. These clean-looking bones that look like they came out of a scientist's office.
Yeah, which is another really strange thing to me, that they wouldn't be black and
have dirt on them, have material on them. No, they're spotless.
Well, that was 7942, 7943. 2 photos.
And these are the bones that were collected with that front or with the skidster. They collected those with the skidster.
I don't know about these that they necessarily collected with the skid steer, but
saying, like, look at how haphazardly they treated the crime scene, but then look at how beautiful the evidence looks. Meticulous, right? It doesn't add up. It doesn't pass the smell test.
3 and then 7944. Hold on just a second. Gallon, just drop by here just for 1 second. Be careful, son.
All right. Dropping off for a
okay.
second.
No. I'm back. He just dropped by just for a second. Yeah, this is 7944. West side of, what does that say? West side of DUR on south end.
No.
West side of
DUH.
I don't know.
Duh. Phone price.
What is abbreviation?
On south end of. I don't know what that is. But there's a bunch of people that signed on it, right?
Yeah, all these special agents. Yep.
Mike.
All special.
What's that? Mike Rant.
Yeah. RINDT. RIN. Yeah. I've seen he wrote a couple of reports.
Okay.
It's the same. And then it looks like we've got some.
So these files look like they're matching what the material they're giving you the picture of, like, oh, this is the match for the item. Is that right?
That's right. And that's, like I said, this Evan, he did this project, and that's where yours got these from. This Evan Christensen. Yep, that's right.
Nice work, Evan.
Yeah, we thank him, whoever he is. I can't pronounce that name. course, we've got better photos of the skeleton, that Eisenberg used, but then there's a bunch more that apparently that these bones were associated with all of these. So that was 79.
Wasn't there a piece of every part of that skeletal there in Stephen's pit? Tiny fragment of that whole skeleton.
There's like a representative fragment from like every part of the body. Yeah, it seems so. It was a little. The reason that they argued that is because if you can argue that there's a little bit of all of the whole body here, then that's the primary burn pit. That's why they were trying to say that. We found pieces from her entire body, and that suggests this is the primary burn pit. Because if you only find a leg or you only find an arm, you're like, well, this wasn't the only place that they were burned, you know? And I think that's why that they argued that so strongly, because they wanted to secure that it was. So then that begs the question, was that actually a little bit of piece from every part of her body, or was it argued in court so it presented as that's the primary burn pit? That's what I believe.
Argued.
I don't
because
think
these bones.
I don't think that it's actually a representative piece from every part of her body. I just think that they were like, we have to make this the primary burn pit, and if we can say that there's a little piece from the whole skeleton, then that suggests that the whole body was here, right? I mean, if you find a little piece from the whole body, then that suggests the whole body was here. So I don't believe that that's accurate. I think that's another thing when you go back and you say they should have had more experts to argue this stuff. That's one of the issues for me.
It's the implication, right? And it carries weight.
Absolutely, it's huge, because if you could and I think they didn't they bring someone in to bring in doubt on that, to bring in doubt about the primary burn location, or was it just Eisenberg up there?
No, well, they did have that guy, the defense did. I can't think of his name, but all he had to work with was photos. He couldn't lay his hands on anything, just photos. Burn barrel number 2. This is the Dassey burn barrel.
So isn't it strange that their narrative that she was burned in the pit, but yet we're finding skeletal remains in the burn barrel too? They can't even stick with their own narrative.
Some of them were cut, had cut marks, hesitation marks. Really wish we had a clear photo. I mean, you can see Reimers here too. That guy was everywhere. He was quietly under the radar. Moving on. But these are all basically the same. Maybe though, okay, now we're getting into, you see some of the contents there.
Yeah, it seems like to be some pretty, there's some larger material coming through here, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't, that looks like a hesitation cut mark in here to me. You see that?
Oh my God, it looks like look at how many saw marks it looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like someone was really missing,
Well, their hesitation. Yeah, their hesitation marks of where they actually want to cut,
Right, but does it look, I don't know. There's another one. That looks like a saw mark if I ever saw one.
Of course, absolutely.
Could it be made by machinery?
That's what I was thinking, Kath. To be honest, go back a picture, Jack. It's like, look at those. If you can zoom in on those cuts, like it's missing. The blade is missing, and then it caught and then hit that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because
if you did that with your hand, just think about how many misses you would have in your hand. Like if you were rubbing your saw, oh, I missed. Oh, no. Why would you miss 8 times? You know what I'm saying? Like
rocks actually look like that when they're gone.
A rock crusher, case 10. Absolutely, that's what worries me. But here's the thing: are we sure that these
blood can make you miss?
Okay.
Because if
Blood.
because if you've got bodily fluids and liquid and you're sawing by hand, it's going to get very slippery, and it could be like blading. The blade is just kind of going everywhere because it's going through tissue, muscle, it's going through, fat, and then the veins, and then you've got blood.
Yeah, I guess because if you're going, this is going to sound really gross, guys, but if you're not just cutting the bone, right? You're cutting the whole flesh and everything, so you can't really see the bone that you're cutting.
That's right.
As you're making
That's right.
marks, and now it makes sense. Now that makes sense.
Which is what we had
always wondered: was she burned whole or was she burned in pieces? And this is another
pieces.
thing that was argued.
Pieces. You dismembered.
That could have been made by a shovel.
In Brendan's
pretty
confession, she goes in there in one piece, though. Is that correct? If I remember correctly.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, so that's a burn barrel number 2, and that was 7964. Let's move on.
I read a case where two guys murdered another guy, and they put him in a burn barrel and burned him. And what they did is they just kept poking him down and basically breaking him up with a shovel.
Well, yeah, if you got a good heat source, yeah, you can. You got another clip?
He was put in whole. Okay. He was put in whole in a 55-gallon drum.
Yes. So this clip is about dry labbing, and this is a really quick one. Dr. Silkman talking about how to, and I think this kind of ties back to what we said in the premiere tonight, and talking about how things can just happen in the lab.
You don't have to actually add, don't have to add any DNA to that key whatsoever. You control the result in the lab, right? So Culhane takes the swab, right? Throws away the swab, has a tube containing Stephen Avery's pure genomic DNA, amplifies it and says, oh, this result came from item C, the key. And that's it. That's how you do it. It's dry labbing. So you don't run the risk of setting up a piece of forensic evidence in the wild, per se. What you do is you manipulate the result in the lab. That's the way to do it.
I mean, that does kind of go back to what we talked about in the episode today.
Yeah, well, it kind of, at least you're only guaranteed to get Stevens, and that's exactly what they find. Only Stevens' DNA.
That's exactly right.
I mean, come on. On her key, they only find his DNA? It's just crazy. And that part
and
today,
no,
oh my God. When she
and no blood.
She goes, oh, well, he's what's known as the super shredder. Like, I couldn't believe, like, the reaction. And I don't usually buy into that, like, body language type stuff. But I think that there are some tells that do exist. And I think that that was one of them. That her body was just like, I'm about to tell a huge effing lie. And it coughed. And it just had a reaction.
Some people can't lie without it coming out somewhere in their body. They can't.
That's right. That's right. Because I think deep down you don't want to lie. Like our minds know what's right and wrong, and whether we want to believe that or not. And anyway, moving on back to the pictures.
Yeah, we've jumped quite a bit. We're up into the 8,000. Yeah, we're into the 8,000s now. We were 7964, I think. Now we're up to 8118. Yeah, and again, this is Reimer.
I mean, that's Bob just comments and he said, like, you know, they say they might have said that he cleaned the key because it had blood on it or whatever. But then why wouldn't he clean it again? Why would he only clean it once to get the blood or residue off of it and then leave and then go in to use it without a glove and not clean it after? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Steven's not cleaning anything.
No.
He's not leaving blood all in her car and then going, oh, look, there's a little bit on the key. I better get that off.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
you have to admit the guy, it's pretty sloppy when he's just bleeding in his own car, like all over the Grand Am and stuff. And it's like, Steven, what are you doing? Like, because
And his truck, he bled all over his damn truck too. Yeah.
And you wonder, and you have to wonder, is that where they got the idea? Of course it is. That's where they went and they looked. Oh, what's all this blood? And then they test it and they go, it's all his blood. And they go, oh, boom, boom, boom. I mean, he kind of handed them the scenario by doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just said, oh, look at he's bleeding all over the Grand Am, bleeding all over his truck. Of course he's going to bleed all over in her car. It's just like 1, 2, 3, connect the dots. And
how you like this evidence? How you like this duct tape evidence tape, Big Jeff?
That's the best.
I do think that's why the people that believe in the guilt of Stephen Avery hang on to the rug doctor, because here we are saying in respect that Stephen Avery was not a very hygienic, clean man that would, go out of, he was bleeding all over his new truck, for God's sake. We've seen pictures of it, and he wasn't, there wasn't, I say this lightly, but there wasn't a sense of pride into doing that. Yet they are like, so we've got a guy that barely cleans, yet he now has his rug doctor and wants to siphon out all the dirt in his trailer when, you know what I mean? Like that. That's why I think they hang on to it.
It's a good angle for them, except for the
it's contradictory.
You can test the rug doctor and prove that there's no DNA in it. Do you know what I'm saying?
But Uyghur didn't want to do that. Uyghur had an answer for that. There's this style. We don't have time, and thousands of samples and hairs and.
Because
I know.
Doesn't that prove it though, Jack? That proves it. He avoided it because it was exculpatory evidence. Because they knew that crime didn't happen in that trailer, and that testing the rug doctor isn't going to work. That's my opinion.
Right.
But
mine too. No, they didn't want to test
it. If they knew if it would work, then they would test it, because then it would be great evidence for their case. Look at this. We found her DNA in the rug doctor. Oh, man. Could you imagine that?
Here we are.
Has that ever been worked out? I think I heard in a story where they found it in a wood chipper, that they connected someone's DNA to a wood chipper. So I don't know why they wouldn't be able to connect it into someone.
Oh yeah, that was on Forensic Files. That guy killed his wife, and he drug her off somewhere. He had rented a wood chipper, and he put her through that damn thing. It's so gross, man.
Yeah.
This is
Can we just quickly explore that? I just want to put out another feeling for the panel and of course the chat. Sure. But let's just explore that, because I think that this is where we get called out for trying to. There's an sense of unbalancing. So we're the first ones to say that we believe that law enforcement may have committed a lot of these planting situations. Yet it appears like they were more trying to focus on connecting Stephen to Teresa than to Teresa to Stephen. And this is what let's address that. So they've got an opportunity here now. So they have the rug doctor. And you're saying that Fallon, I believe you just said, no, we're not going to waste our time. Sorry, my apology. Apology. Uyghur said, no, we don't have time to do that. Yet we're talking about an opportunity for them to plant again. They had her hair that they had taken from a brush. They could have utilized that moment to kind of secure the case even more. So why is it that it seems so selective with certain things that they were planting? And I think that's why a lot of people get hung up on the whole that they had to stand there with red faces, admit that there was no DNA in that trailer. Yet we all believe that, I should not say that's very unfair for me to say that many of us have opinionated that the key was planted still possibly by law enforcement. So if they're able to plant a key, why not plant Teresa in there when they were going with that narrative? She was in that trailer. It's a very, very hard question. I understand that, but it's a fair one.
Well, the
I mean,
thing
I think
is that you don't know who, if law enforcement is involved, we don't know who those people are. And the only thing that I can say to that is this is decentralized. This is not a memo going out. Hey, everybody, know your role. Today's the Stephen Avery conspiracy day. Like it's a couple people who are in a position of power and can manipulate a few things, or one person. I mean, frankly, it could be one cop or a rogue officer who's worried about the depositions and is just taking it upon themselves to do all these things. Like, and so because it's not centralized, I firmly believe that. Because if there is some sort of funny business, this is not some big plan. This is otherwise. If it was a big plan, it would have broke already. I feel like the plans work when they're simple, and and there's not a lot of people involved, less moving parts. Otherwise, I believe that things come out in the wash. I really do.
Yeah,
That's a definite fair answer.
I think that with the key, the reason I bitch about it so much, I guess we all do, but when that happened on the 8th, and suddenly Manitowoc was gone the next morning, they were ran off the property. There's not another report from Manitowoc after the 8th, and I found that really strange because they were there for 3 more days, but on that property. That I guess maybe you could explain that, but I still find it weird as shit. I do think that what Jeff said probably makes the most sense. I do think that Culhane was massaged, maybe not pushed per se, maybe not even asked. I don't know. There's some weird shit going on with the lab, in my opinion. That's just me. And I say that because of the blunt, bloody instrument. I bitched about it before, but now we get this unfiled warrant. It's like, what the fuck, man? What the hell's going on there? And that tells me some weird shit happened there. I don't know. I do think it was decentralized, though. I have to agree with that. And they, in reality, along with the media story, the media coverage, they didn't need a hell of a lot. Stephen had already been in a shit ton of trouble, and I have to agree with you, JJ. But it is a fair question. They could have.
It could have, and it was not just. Let's even back up a little bit further. We just heard Dr. Silkman in that clip where he says it all could have been controlled in the lab, and that is what I'm saying as well. Let's make it even simple than that. Let's say law enforcement didn't have to plant her in the trailer, but Sherry Culhane could have. She had the power.
Yep. Well, again, I mean, it with DNA, it takes such a small amount these days that, in reality, you need very little, and you're cooked with the way our justice system is now. Well, at least then. I mean, we had the CSI effect going on back then. It was much, much more prevalent in the world. It was some of the dumbest shit that was. I don't know if you guys have ever watched CSI, and it is an entertaining show, but they do some of the most insane shit as far as the lab. Oh my God. I watch it. I actually watched an episode probably a month or so ago, and they pull up this, they got a DNA result in 9 minutes or whatever the hell. It was like, that doesn't work. It's not going to work like that. And it did some other stuff too. But people believed that stuff because they were really slick about how they pulled these shows off. It looked real, and they sold it. People were like, well, I can get that DNA in no time at all. Well, no, they really can't. It's going to take a little time. But it is a fair question. They could have they could have painted a much darker picture, I guess, if there had been a centralized actual plan. I
think that kind of proves that it wasn't. I mean, it proves or when you're finding someone, are you like, we can't be too fancy about this? I don't know. Like, I don't know what goes through your mind. That would go through my mind. We can't make this look too good. Like, it can't look, because if you go about it and you're like, most crimes that we solve, you get one piece of physical DNA and you get circumstantial stuff and carries the weight, and then you're like, but so you can't. And saying that someone, I don't know, it spins my head, because Ken Kratz still goes forward with that narrative. She was murdered in the trailer, and it's like, all they needed is one drop of blood in that trailer, and they could say, well, he cleaned up pretty good, but he didn't get everything, and that would have been huge. So why didn't they? If you believe in the planting scenario, why didn't they? I don't know. Does it look too good, or did you not have the opportunity? Maybe that shows that it excludes certain people, let's put it that way, from being planters. Anyway, let's continue into the pictures, and then
I was just thinking about this photo here. If you notice the dates, 12/20/05. If everyone remembers, they went back and re-sifted a lot of the fragments.
A resift.
They did. Yep.
That is the strangest. Isn't that a strange thing? Does anyone else find that to be?
Well, I do. I find it.
Isn't that tag 8140 possible human in barrel number 4?
It sounds like you didn't get enough evidence. Go back and get more, and now's an opportunity for you to drop a piece.
It just says,
you know what I mean?
It just says bone fragments. But yeah.
But I think in the overall of that 8140 was possibly human in barrel number 4. Don't quote me on that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't remember that one, Cav.
I really like Jazz Naz Gaming's comment, and I want to highlight that. The state was more interested in planting Stephen's DNA rather than Teresa's. And maybe that's why it does kind of, I don't know. Does it bring back the question, like, was this all or mostly conducted in the laboratory?
I definitely think part of it was. There's no doubt about that. 8140.
Non-diagnostic. Okay, yeah. So which means it's a bone that you think is human, but I don't think that you can confirm it based on what you have. Like, it's an incomplete sample. So
look at the date.
January 26th.
Yeah. Remember the date on the other one? December.
Yeah, why are we getting these so late to the game, right? Well, it looks like they're going back to the wall. If they said go resift, that means they want more samples. If they're saying going back to the well and trying to find more, means they don't have what they want, or they need more of a sample to. I don't know.
Yep. All right, that's 8140. 8146. Is that right? Or 8148. Not bad. Okay, again on the 20th December.
Suspected bone fragments.
Yep.
With 0 cash value.
The box of Tupperware box.
Yeah. Well, I remember when they sorted through a lot of these, and I've seen quite a few of these pictures, and don't let me slow you down from scrolling, but it does seem like they have piles. They collect a lot, and then they kind of sort through and go, no, that's animal, that's human, no, that might be human, that's definitely human. That that's how they sort them, and I've seen those pictures before. They collected a lot of animal bone. Like, you have to remember that as an important point in all of this. Why would there be so much animal bone mixed in? If they
Yeah,
didn't
I mean,
get
I
from
just,
the quarry, I mean, if they didn't get it from the quarry, I guess some of them could be. I wish they identified the animal. You know what I mean? Because some of them, frankly,
yeah,
just look like chicken bones.
some of them were
In this
definitely avian.
in this raging inferno of a fire, they look like fresh chicken bones. You know, like it's just
Contents of
hard
barrel.
to fathom.
We're back to more contents of barrel number 2 under this
All
tag
right.
number.
I think we were checking out the actual barrels last time we were on live, Jack. So now we get to see what's in these barrels, huh?
Yep.
Number 2,
That
do we
was,
remember where that came from? Which is that the
that's it.
Dassey barrel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is, 8140 or 8314 and 8315. Okay. We got several photos here. Contents of barrel 1. Can't read that. Hey, we'll find the answer. Nope, can't read that either. Ah, looks like that's a jigsaw blade. That's some other type of jigsaw blade. Top of a Coke can or something. Rivets. Somebody's underwear got burned up. Looks like that might be a bone of some kind.
Yeah, sawzall blade. A couple
Yep.
of zipper. Like, is that zipper still intact after this huge fire? Yeah,
I don't think the
looks like
zipper is, but that's just it's just a tab off of it. Yeah.
it's all rusted. You know what I mean? That's been there for a long time.
Oh yeah. So that was 8315.
All right, time for another clip, Jack.
Do it.
Okay, so I got. Let's see here. This is a clip going back to the blood demos that Kel started doing for us. And so this one's like 2 minutes.
Good, because I gotta hit the head. I'll be back.
Okay, great. All the way back to season 1.
Done. So what I've done is I've just opened my tube. I've got a dropper. I put a little bit up. I drew up a little bit of blood, and literally all you have to do is you can control it. So when I did my experiments, you can watch this. Just a little. Firstly, I want you to see that tiny little bit right there at the tip that I'm able to draw.
Yeah.
See it coming down? Look how much you're able to create with just this little drip. Ready? This little bit of blood.
And what is that thing that you're using to drop it called?
It's just a dropper. But if you can see here, oh, where is it? This is the blood. I'm not sure why it's trying hard to focus because it's such a white. And you can just
Oh my. Well, how do you want it to look? Basically,
however you want it to look, and you just do it with the tip. So I was able to do that with the ignition. I was able to create the pattern of the ignition with the tip. And as you can see, look how much you can create with just that tiny, tiny little drip.
That droplet, Kelly, is approximately 50 microliters. So that goes to show, and Kelly just beautifully demonstrated, the amount of blood you needed to seed that RAV was under 0.5 ml of blood. So you see the blood that she's got in that droplet, in that dropper, that's all you need to have reproduce what you saw in that RAV. That's it. You don't need a huge amount. Just one dropper for about 2 minutes and you're done. In out, you've seeded the RAV, you walk away.
Wow. Wow. When you put it like that. Thank you, Kelly, for all the blood experiments you shared
So yeah,
throughout
basically
the
you don't need
show. I
much.
hope we get some more. You don't need much, do you?
No,
Wow.
goes a long way. Tiny amount goes a
Little
long
goes a long
way.
way. When you're talking about blood, certainly, because think about it. All you need is a trace, a little bit, and that's enough to say your blood was found, right? Like it could be the smallest little smudge of your blood found there, and you are no, right? So
Yeah, it makes me think on what order they were planting it in the RAV. Like, you know, that they've got this droplet, and did they start in the back passenger side and squeezed it, and maybe used more than what they thought because that was the biggest droplet
right,
that ran down,
right.
and then they've used
Yeah.
up the rest. And it seems like it got less and less as it goes throughout the RAV.
Could very well be, right? Like, and when he's describing it, I'm just thinking of the tarp the whole time, guys. I'm sorry, that's where my brain goes. In and out in 2 minutes. That's what Silkman just said.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with what he said. I think it could be that fast.
Yeah.
Well,
100%.
It would take no time at all. I mean, you could see with her blood experiment there, it would literally take no time at all. Done.
And Cal wasn't even in a hurry.
Right?
She wasn't even framing anyone that we know of.
Nope.
Let's hope not.
Well, let's
continue on.
Let us proceed, or as Big Jeff
Okay.
says, on to the next.
This is 8317. Looks like burn barrel number 3. I don't think we have much here. And it looks like that's, there may be something here. Nope. Just a box. That's all there is. Wow. That was pretty dry.
Drier than a dad joke.
Mm-hmm. 8318. Wow. Wow. There's a lot here. Holy cow.
Okay, well, it looks like we have some substance here, folks.
A little bit. I think this is the white box, actually. Remember the white box that got delivered to Eisenberg?
Contents sifted from burn pit near Steven's residence / garage.
Correct.
Steve's. Like they don't call it the near, the property and the address. They call it Steve's. You know what I mean? It's like they're on first name basis with him.
Well, yeah, they're pals, Unknown human remains. Leventon, Eisenberg.
Unknown.
Separated by body part. What is that supposed to mean?
Would you see that at? Did I miss something?
Go back one. It says, yeah, that unknown human remains, and then underneath, separated by body part.
Separated by body part. Separated. What does that even mean? Separated.
What is that?
Oh, because they're in different packages. They're in different packages. I bet in there, and then each one is body part.
Package number 2.
Because when you open the bag, I bet there's more in there, right? Separated by body part. Here we go.
Yeah, I think there's a package inside there. Here's the DCI. Here's the DCI receipt. You can see the number up there, 10987. All fired up with evidence tape here. Okay, that's the same one. I was looking at that sheet down there. Content sifted from burn pit near Stephen Avery's residence garage, 11-8. There's the tag.
Oh, if you guys have some blood questions, sorry to tease you like that and play blood clips. Kel's actually on her way home. She's going to be there in just a few minutes. So if you do have questions, or if you're waiting for a question that addresses that, she's on the way and she sees it.
It
What
looks
do we
like
got
they've
here,
been.
Jack?
It's an empty box. The bones have been removed out of the box. And I'm not sure what this plastic bag is. It looks quite empty.
Here's what we call an in situ picture, folks.
There it is, full.
An empty box. Oh, it's full. These
Yeah,
are
and
best
they had
returned to all box, I believe, right?
That empty box is probably about the only honest thing in the whole case.
Wow. Wow.
Sorry, but had to say it.
No, it's pretty good. Just so damning. Just so good.
Here's your evidence. Ta-da!
Seen that picture 100 times. I've studied this picture a lot.
cranial, face, dental.
Face, dental.
1776.
Is that returned? Why is everything labeled 1776? Is that the DC? That's just the DCI. It just happens to be 1776.
I think that's their. I think. Go ahead.
Oh, just according to the list I have, it's not on there either. So I'm thinking that the list I have is probably.
Well, I think that's their case number. That's their overall case number, because all the DCI reports are labeled 05776.
Oh,
177.
okay. All right. I'll just see, because them for sure would have been handed back. So I'll just have a quick look, because each number has a description of what the bones were that were handed back. So I'll just have a quick look.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all the DCI have the same tag number. It just happens to be 05. 1776.
That's their case number.
Right. Remember, we saw that piece earlier that had the DCI case number on it, and it had the Calumet case number on it, and it had
correct.
Right. And that's what happens is after it gets processed through your department, you got to put your stamp on there. Pelvis.
Last one was the other one was ribs.
Is that zooming in best you can?
How does it go?
Boy, yeah. I mean, how do you, the reasonable man or woman, how do you get bones to get like that?
Don't know.
Because if you just burn someone whole, right? That's not just chopped up. Okay, think about this. If you chop like that, think about like you chop someone up. I'm sorry, this is really gross. You chop them up so they fit in the burn barrel. So that's like elbow, knee, head. Sorry, this is really gross, but you don't need to break them down into tiny little pieces and then burn them. That's what I'm saying. This is not the crime that we're being told it is, right? Because if you chop someone up, like I've seen how many gangster movies, right? Like, I'm sorry, like there is some realism to that. I'm sorry it's a movie, but there's realism to it when they chop someone up, right? It's like big bones. It's like a whole, like half a femur or a whole femur, right? Like, big chunks, long, not these ground down and smashed up, gravel looking, look like they went through a
rock crusher,
a kiln, and then a rock crusher, or a rock crusher and then a kiln. One of those two, right? Like they've just been overworked for the crime that they're saying happened, and the conditions of one Stephen Avery's property, because there's no kiln to burn it this hard. Frankly, the Sakiki letter sounds more realistic. They burned her in an aluminum smelter, is more realistic than the scenario Ken Kratz went with. Sorry, but it is. How do you get bones like that? I say it again. How do you get bones to look like that? What do you do to it to that have your end result?
You don't necessarily have to cut her up either. Like I said, there's that case just a few years back where those two guys put a whole man in a 55-gallon drum and burnt him and just kept pushing him down as he burnt with a shovel.
Yeah, as long as you've got fuel, you can keep doing that. Just as Kath said.
Mm-hmm. And they did that in a gravel pit as well, where one of the men used to work. They took him there. They basically killed him and then put him in the barrel. Yeah, must have just fueled him up with some sort of fuel. And then as, he started to burn away, they just kept stoking him down with a shovel until I've got a picture of the barrel, and all that's at the bottom is like ashes and tiny fragments with the shovel head and not the handle, because the handle was wood. And you would have never ever known in 100 years that a man had just been burnt in that barrel. But they didn't cut him up first. He went in whole and just got stoked down with a shovel. So he would have had, they would have found bone fragments with cut marks as well on him.
Like, I'm sorry to slow you down there a little bit, Jack, but look at what we're looking at, guys. Look at the last few pictures and look at what they're. If you can just kind of review the last few cranial fragments, and then before that is.
This is interesting here.
Scapula and clavicle. Remember, we were talking earlier about making the case that this was the primary burn pile. That
miscellaneous burn.
This is what she's doing in this labeling right here. She's identifying all of these different elements, quote unquote, different elements of the skeleton. And this way you can make the case that this was the primary burn pit. So this is what we're seeing right in front of us, because she's identifying these different parts throughout the whole bone. This is the scapula and the clavicle, right?
Yep,
so okay,
right.
I got something. And so if you're trying to make the case, this is how she processes it. Goes, oh, this could be a femur. She doesn't really know. This could pass for a clavicle. This could, and I'm sorry to be like that, but that's kind of how I see it. They're making the case.
And here's additional. It does additional cranial fragments, not X-rayed. Why the hell not? Remember, they X-rayed the other and found the metallurgical. I don't know the word. Where they found the lead fragments in the bone. The doctor certainly.
Yeah.
And then here's the entire box again.
I've seen this picture countless times. So.
Yep.
I mean, like some of these bones, I will admit, they're hard to deny that isn't an eye socket, right? Like I think that it would be hard to find, an expert to be like, oh, absolutely not. I mean, I guess you could probably always find an expert to say anything you want, but I think that there is some legit science going on here, folks. I don't think it's all hokey pokey.
No.
But like I said before, why is that all they have of her skeleton if that's the burn pit, if that's the primary burn pit?
And he was found
the skeleton.
Found not guilty. Found not guilty of destruction of a corpse or whatever, mutilating a corpse. Yeah.
Deep breaths, Jack. Deep breath.
And then the occipital.
Jack, I just sent you a picture of the X-rayed bones.
I'll probably pull that up.
Yeah, if you want at any time. But yeah, I just find them really interesting, the way the edges are all jagged in the X-ray.
Give me just 1 second here. Oh, yeah. Stop sharing that one. And then I will share this one that you just sent me. There we go. Pull that up, Jeff.
Oh, here's the X-rays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Some of them. Oh, yeah, no, that's them.
And look at how jagged those edges are. That's really weird.
I know. I find that extremely interesting.
Those had to happen somehow, folks. Some trauma to those bones were caused to make them shape like that. You have to just keep thinking like that. When is it plausible for Stephen Avery, or anyone else for that matter, to, what is he out there chopping up the bones like with a ice pick and a hammer, smashing them together? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how did they get like this? This has bothered me, and I know it's bothered you too, Kat, for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not a simple burn. It's not just throwing a body in a burn pit and then this is not the end result of just burning.
Looks shattered.
Right. They're shattered and smashed up into little tiny pieces. It's insanity.
Mm-hmm. It is insanity.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever seen this photograph. Thank you.
I mean, and that's why, like, my brain has always gone there with the rock crushing theory. And I know, but then that goes like, well, then maybe these aren't Teresa's bones. You know what I mean? Like,
that's only yours and mine, Jeff. That's just our theory.
How do you get bones like that then? You know, how do you?
Well, that's it. It makes sense. Look where she's found. Look where she's found.
Maybe they just get that hot. They get that brittle. They get brittle and hot, and you can just smash them into pieces like that. Maybe I just don't understand the physiology of it.
Yeah, I just think, look where she's found. Look what's around you. What's available to you. You're trying to get rid of a body really quickly. You don't want any trace of it. I don't know. The equipment's right there.
I mean, how does Ken Kratz explain that? When was Stephen Avery smashing these bones up? You know what I mean? In between calls with Jody? Come on.
Yeah, right. He sure didn't. I've listened to those phone calls on that day. He sure didn't sound any different than he ever does.
He didn't sound rattled to me. He didn't seem rushed to get off the phone. He used up the full 15 minutes, I think, on both calls, didn't he?
That's right.
So it's not like he was rushing or, I mean, he was late to answer the phone, but, or whatever, maybe. But, like, that doesn't mean it's not really, and then he's like, I don't know. I was outside and I'm here now. So, you know, all right. Oh, I gotta share the button. I'm sorry, Jack. I'm sitting here and
oh, you're fine. You're fine. I figured you were reading or something.
Well, I got another clip ready to go.
Well, you want to play the clip?
I don't know. You want to play the clip? Let's go more blood then. More blood clips.
Do it. This is it'll be right here when we get back. That's fine.
So all I was going to just show you guys a bit of a sneak peek is basically just show you how absolutely, hang on, let me just get rid of the drabs, simple it is to drop.
Yeah. And
That's all
gravity
you
does.
have to do. And then gravity, when the time is right. I'll be honest with you, when I did my experiment, I actually did it measuring, and you'll see it in my videos where I had the gravity on the right angle because I am able to control it. And I did a measurement of my car, and then I came back and did it by ruler, and you'll see the ruler and how I did it. And then gravity will just basically do its own thing. There's a bubble in it. That's why it's, let me just, there we go.
Yeah, gravity takes over.
So gravity will take over. So that is absolutely wet as hell right now. What we might do is let's leave this here, and then we'll continue with our podcast. And then at the end of the podcast, let's come back and see what EDTA is looking like. As you guys see, you saw it all live. No editing. That's what the result was. So you guys compare what we see with a few hours, or not even a few hours, an hour at max sitting there based to what we see in the picture. What I then wanted to also do was show you this trick. So this is, I've just dropped a little bit of water on it. I'm just going to swirl it up because you got to remember this is now gone a little bit coagulated. Now, I've done this with fresh blood as well. Fresh blood, you can't do that. Once it's coagulated, as Dr. Silkman will probably tell you afterwards, it breaks away. It doesn't dissolve. It just runs into like a pink nothingness. So this is EDTA blood. And all I've done here is I've added normal water. Usually you would use sterling water. Pardon?
Distilled?
Wow. Yeah, distilled or deionized water.
Yeah. But because I don't have it on me, I'm just going to use this one. Now watch this. Do a little shake. Back to blood. I'm able to plant again.
Correct. And you know why? Because there's no coagulation factors there.
Right? Where in fresh blood there is. You can't do this with fresh blood.
In fresh blood, it'll congeal, right? It'll congeal up. Because when you form a clot, there are two stages. There's a soft clot, and then there's extensive cross-linking by, I think it's collagen, fibrin. There's a whole lot of clotting factors that come into, and also the involvement of platelets as well. So it's a complex process. Once it congeals, you're not going to be able to reverse it. But in blood that's got EDTA, there are no clotting factors that are active, which means you can reconstitute the blood.
Yeah, the blood stuff is just so. Go ahead, Jack.
No, that's interesting as shit. No, go ahead.
It is all I was going to say is how fascinating that stuff is, and talking about EDTA, and you know, you just have to remember there's two important things for me in this, and that number one is that if the cops planted the blood, that's most likely had EDTA in it. Number two, I mean, that's up for grabs. I mean, someone could argue the other point, but it's most likely has EDTA in it. Part two to that, it is also possible that blood has EDTA in it, and the level of EDTA is so low that it's undetectable, so you can't prove that it's EDTA blood. That's where I'm at. Maybe I'm mistaken on a few of those things, and you can correct me.
I don't know. You know, you want to trust a guy like LeBeau from the FBI that he was on the up and up, but I had issues.
He didn't actually take the samples, right? He tested the samples that Culhane provided.
Correct. That's right.
So, exactly. You know, it's like, that's all he can say is like, well, this is what we came with, what was provided to us, right? And so, I don't know. Maybe Culhane, you know, I'm not into like accusing everyone of everything all the time, but
after the FBI,
same names keep popping up, you know.
After the FBI told them that you know, it would be 6 to 8 months, maybe even longer, to do this test. All of a sudden, we can have it for in a couple of weeks. Something's not computing here for me. I don't know.
I think it was it was when Buting and Strang wanted to get an EDTA test because they thought it would help their case. It was not going to come in time, but when from another angle, prosecution wants to get the EDTA test, it miraculously comes just in time before while the case is being argued. I mean,
Buting had looked at it back in the summer of 06, and he couldn't find anyone to do it. He called multiple places, and he was told basically no one tests for this. No one. And then it came up, there was some conversation later on in the year. I guess that I don't know I can't remember what all Gunn's conversations were. And then over the Christmas break, this lawyer for this federal lawyer for the eastern part of Wisconsin got involved with the FBI, and I guess he actually called Colburn or Link or one of them. He got in contact with them, and all of a sudden the FBI is able to. They think he can get it done. They wanted permission to try to test the blood, and Willis said, "Yeah, well, go ahead." They weren't sure they were going to get results back in time, and then sure enough, middle of trial, boom, it's all done, ready to go. And Willis allowed it. So, anyway, we're up to 8319. We're almost done with these photos, by the way.
Oh my God. Sounds good.
Yeah, I know. Crazy, huh? This is barrel number 4. Whatever that is.
Cap, do you remember?
Avery property. Contents. Barrel number 4. It's
Barrel number 4.
What is barrel number 4?
Wasn't that Stevens barrel?
That's what my gut was, but I'm not sure.
I'm going to look.
Same thing. Crap. It looks like there's one. They've got one bone down here, whatever the hell that is. And then.
That thing is tiny.
Looks like a belt buckle. Yeah, there it is right there on the right.
Hey, what's that?
Yeah, it looks like a belt buckle that's been burned up, but I'm not sure.
Certainly looks like that to me.
Yeah.
Doesn't really prove anything, but
no. So that's 8319. Now we've jumped again, 9597. One photograph with a bunch of bones. Can't read 9597. This bag up here on the top says, what does that say? Can you read that? Face? No. I can't read it.
I guess that's facial. Is that it? That's it. Facial and
Can you read? Can you read that, Kath?
Facial and
Too blurry for me.
It's not cranial, is it?
Mandrel? Not mandrel.
Cranial.
Frontal? Frontal. Wardy says frontal.
Yeah.
Face and frontal? Maybe.
Face ID frontal.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, look at how small these bones are. I mean,
look how jagged they look at these jagged edges again too, guys.
It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up.
Well, yeah, I mean, mainly there's really no point. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to do that. To me, there's not.
If you're just trying to get away from this crime, which is all you really need to do, is eliminate any DNA. Like, here's the thing. He goes to this extent. Just think about this, folks. He goes to this extent to get rid of any evidence that this woman, connecting him to this woman, but forgets to wipe down the car after he
Yeah.
reads in it.
Right.
I mean, he wiped it down once because there's nothing else in there, right? Her fingerprint, her stuff's not even found, but he's so good at cleaning that trailer, but he just forgets to wipe down her steering wheel and column. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't add up. And just like the bones, they don't add up.
I really can't read this at all. And whatever this tag, it's number. Is that EJ? EJ's got an identifier, but I don't know what. I can't remember what it is.
That is EJ.
I don't know. You'd have to look. You have to look at the crime lab returns. It's in there. I don't have that handy. I don't know what it is.
I mean, we don't know what it is, and it's really, even if we did, I don't know if it's much to see because we can't. Well,
Probably to see.
Does it look yellow? Like, it looks like a straw. Bottom right corner looks like a yellow straw, doesn't it?
Yeah, right there. I can see that.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, what could it be? What is a drink straw from her car? That'd be interesting, huh? Oh, because this isn't Rav stuff. This is found out in the burn pits or burn barrel, or this is all in that batch. So
yeah, it's all forensic stuff. So anyway, that's the last one of these.
What letter was that? I've got letters in front of me now.
EJ.
EJ. One sealed plastic bag containing described as cranial pieces.
Oh, well, there you go.
Understand something.
Got another clip for us?
Oh, I do. I'm getting it.
No, you're fine.
Set.
We're done with those. I'm going to pull out of that, and I'll shut this off, and you go for it whenever you're ready.
I want you to understand something. A Q-tip has like a cotton fabric, as you guys can see. What do you think its purpose is?
To get wax out of your ears. Oh.
Yeah, well, actually, you're not meant to even put it in your ears, Big Jeff.
It's absorbed.
It's absorbed. So
Correct.
when people just assume because of the pattern on the ignition that this was used to put, as the actual, I don't know, the pattern per se, the applicator. I'm going to show you why that doesn't make sense. So as you can see, I'm going to put my into the Q-tip right into the blood. I'm going to really try to soak it up. As you can see, and then I'm going to put it on. Look, it absorbs. You can't use a Q-tip.
It's not coming
to make
off.
them up. It's not because it absorbs it.
You need a paintbrush, I guess.
You're seeing it right now, everyone. The Q-tip was not the applicator or method to plant the blood. Now, I put on gloves for a reason, because the next thing is people say, oh, they squeezed it out. As you can see, I'm squeezing as fucking hard as I can here. You saw me put it in the liquid and nothing. Look, not even my fingers have got blood on it.
That's why they use those cotton applicators at crime scenes in order to absorb a sample onto the Q-tip, not to add a sample onto another surface.
But couldn't you put it in there so much that it was so saturated that there was a drop of blood at the end of it that you could draw with?
Well, let's try. Oh, hang on. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to look at, make sure I'm getting to the bottom of it. No, it's not even. Oh, that's got it now. Sorry. maybe that bit. But you know what I've done?
More of a seagull shape.
But here's the problem, though, Big Jeff.
Turn your wrist. Turn your wrist.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem with that, though. This is now completely saturated, and it has absorbed up a lot of my blood left.
Right.
So they would have had to have been
way to do it. It would be a dumb way to do it.
Which is not an efficient way. Very dumb, because if you absorb too much of that EDTA and you have no EDTA,
taking all the blood and you're ended up leaving it on the end of the Q-tip. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, Kelly. Thank you. But what I think you told me is that maybe what it looks like a Q-tip because that's how they used it to take a sample, because that's what they used to pull the sample, which is exactly what you're saying. This is used for taking samples, not giving samples.
That's right.
See that mark, when you see that mark, it might actually be a Q-tip taking the sample from the person who used a Q-tip to extract the sample.
We have no in situ photos.
Yeah, we know that Groffy and Culhane use Q-tips to do presumptive tests and DNA tests. So that means that the blood that you see on the ignition switch was actually swabbed 3 times, once by Groffy and twice by Culhane.
Oh, God. That was a little bit exaggerated, wasn't it?
Well, I love those clips.
I actually did another one. I actually did an experiment the other day. I saw an opportunity like I do, and I went for it. So I actually cut my finger in not the same hand. I did it on my left, the exact same location, and probably not as deep and probably not as long as Stephen's, middle finger. I had cleaned my room and I dropped a glass, and the glass went straight into it and I started to drip. So, of course, I ran straight to the bathroom and I was so happy. I was like, bleed, my precious, bleed. And I find myself instinctively now just pressing play, and I was recording everything. And I thought, okay.
You heard it here first, folks, Cal. You're like, you got excited when you got cut. I just needed to, we couldn't let that go that easily. You got really excited when you cut yourself. And I just think that shows a level of, is it dedication or addiction or a little bit of both? But
probably a little bit of both at this stage. So as I bled, I thought I had already done this experiment before, but I had never seen it brought in as Kathleen's alternative method. So we have always seen in Making a Murderer, and obviously in her experts' opinions, that the applicator or the tool that was used was most likely a syringe or a dropper or something of those format. But now she has alleged in her reply motion that she has now introduced another alternative, and that was a rag or a sponge. So like the Q-tip, I had already done this experiment before. I just don't think we've ever put this one out. And I wanted to get a sponge, like a proper sponge, because I thought she's introduced these tools because they're convenient. They're household items that you could have access to, and they're relatively easy to grab. So I grabbed a sponge and I grabbed a cloth, and I went into the bathroom straight on record, and I started documenting the collection of the blood from onto the sponge and then onto the cloth. And then, of course, I added a little bit of water and started the squeezing process to try to get the patterns and the flow to see whether I could have transferred it in a cloth format and made those, the patterns in the car. Yeah. My conclusion was exactly almost like the Q-tip. They're absorbents. Their whole purpose is to absorb liquid and obtain liquid to wash and wipe away things. They're not there to drip. Well, of course, when you get an excessive amount of liquid, they're always going to drip. But we're not talking about excessive amount of blood here. We're talking about 1/10 of a mil. We're talking about a tiny little drops that when I have a chance to upload my phone onto my laptop, and then I can show you guys this video, you'll see that the coagulation had already started. That when I wiped away with the sponge, the residue, the clotting format was already there. And I'm not on any medications. I'm not on anything. My house was cool, like it wasn't exposed to excessive heat. So there was nothing in terms of environmental elements that was speeding the process up anymore. It's just the way it was going. But again, that's my body, that's my blood. Stevens could have taken a lot longer to process through the cycles. Regardless, the conclusion that I had, which I will share with you guys once I get this up, so don't let me forget, Jeff, maybe not today, but we will definitely in the near future. It was impossible. When I was able to get any blood coming out in liquid form, it was so watered down, and that was from the sponge, that you would not be able to use it. You could tell immediately that it was literally watered down blood. As for the cloth side, it actually ran clear. The blood actually stained the cloth, but didn't even have any residue of any kind of pink coloration at all from it either. So yeah, I just thought I'd give you guys a little bit of that update.
Yeah, thank you. I will be anxious to see what you come up with, and when we have something to share, we should share that. Maybe whenever you get it kind of ready to go, let me know, and we will do that. As long as it's like you said, Kel, when you did those blood experiments way back when, you did it, number one, because you wanted to know how it worked, not because you couldn't just take someone's word for it, or you physically wanted to understand physiology of how the biology of how it breaks down, what these different chemicals, EDTA, do to the blood, and how it changes the structural makeup of and that's what I would urge everyone. I know you all can't get your hands on EDTA blood, but next time you do cut, and I did it myself just in the last week, I had a cut, and I was like thinking like Kel, I left a drop on my freezer, like on the no, that's not what happened. What happened is I went to get there and I left a drop on there, and it happened organically. And so what I looked and what I noticed was there was another tiny little drop. And I feel like that's likely to happen, that not only do you leave one drop in a real motion, but you also leave a little smaller residual drops. But we don't see that anywhere. We only see single perfect forming drops. That's how I interpret it. So I thought it was that angle is interesting to me. I don't know if you guys have any comments on that, or Kel.
Oh, not really any comments on that. Just that I'm glad that you got to experience that. That's what I say to people. I'm not asking anyone to go out and physically hurt themselves or harm themselves where they're openly getting themselves to bleed. But if an opportunity like yours and like mine became an accident, and I seized the opportunity to put it into action and just use that to use it as an experience and experiment. But my other thing is, I want to be clear on it, because I'm reading a few comments. Apology, I have been driving. I have not been able to read YouTube or the chat for a little bit. But when I went into these experiments, I really want this to be very clear. I didn't go in wanting the results to go one way or the other. I actually went in wanting the experiments to teach me what it is. I didn't know whether it was going to go one way, whether it was going to go the other. And I've been very vocal in saying that even though I did a solid year of experiments, I worked between EDTA blood and fresh blood, and I've done all different alternatives to that. I still don't even have a conclusion of where the blood comes from. Now, I've never said that it's not possible that it didn't come from the sink. I just said the probability of it is extremely low because of all the factors that you have to factor in to achieve it's a relatively hard task. You know, we all sit there and go, well, anyone can do a blood experiment. And I believe a lot of people have. And I'm all for it. But your mind is already there. You already got an objective of what you need to do. We're meant to be, when we're doing these experiments, we got to remember I went into planning mode with mine with 3 consultants at my doctor, the doctors at my work in emergency. We sat down and constructed how as accurately I could get these experiments to work, to mimic Stephen's blood and the whole experiment and the whole atmosphere and everything. Yet, in reality, this is what we have to work with. The reality is that Stephen Avery claims that he reopened his finger, he bled, which no one doubts that. He walked to his trailer, he bled in the sink. Again, there is evidence that there was blood in the sink, so no one doubts that. But then this is the moment. He leaves and they start to leave to go to Menards. There's the window period between him bleeding in the sink to him walking out the door, getting in, and then having to turn back around is, I reckon it would be a minimal window around 5 minutes. So someone had less than 5 minutes to put this action into place. Now, again, it goes back to what I was saying. We're well constructed with these experiments. We've already got the thought process. This is a whole different scenario when normal people just don't walk around with drippers in their pocket or have the idea that all I need is my uncle or my friend or this guy to bleed. It's spontaneous, it's an opportunity, and it's very, very hard to think that the layers you have to get to it makes the probability a lot lower. Now, could people do it? Of course they could do it. But there is a factor in it that you could be successful in taking the blood in those 5 minutes. But it's the processing of from getting from A to B, because the coagulation doesn't stop. So if you're carrying that blood in a dropper, a sponge or whatever, the blood is formatting and coagulating in that tool or whatever instrument you've used. So by the time you get to the rag, if it's not relatively close or another 5 minutes has passed, you're spoiling your opportunity to do experiments. And then you have to take into consideration fresh blood. And Dr. Silkman had said this on many occasions. Fresh blood does not mix with fresh water. It has to be distilled water. And sometimes the temperature has to be warm. And not only does it have to be warm, you have to have the right quantity of blood that measures out with the blood. If you put too much distilled water, you will wash your blood away. If you have not enough, it still will give you a coagulation gel type blood stain. So this again, this is all in 5 minutes.
Who do we know who's equipped with that kind of stuff?
Law enforcement, because they carry these kind of tools in their vehicles for accidents and roadside. I don't know. I think it's a little bit far to say roadside drug testing now, because I don't think it was around there, like your swabbing and all that. But there's always roadside assistance that they do carry these kind of kits, especially medical kits.
I had a question for Kel. When you did your experiments, I remember you put some blood, I think it was just the bit that you had left. I'm not sure at what stage in your experiments you did it, but you put it on the concrete because Kathleen Zellner's reenactment of Bobby chasing her down to Cass and hitting her over the head, that we sort of at one point thought, well, wouldn't there be blood on the road?
Yeah. So I have never told anyone that, except a few of you. I actually did do a Cass Road experiment in terms of I put blood in soil, dirt in the environment, and I wanted to see what the elements would do with my blood. That's another conversation on itself. And I do have all this documented in video form. It's just something that I haven't really put forward yet. And then I did the road, Kath's right. See, when I was doing these experiments, there was a group of us. There was actually a few of us. There wasn't there, Kath? There was me, you, Justa, Denny, Jess, Avery, Wave. There was an apology if I did miss someone. I do believe there might have been someone else. But while I was doing all these people were a part of it, the journey with me. So when I was doing it, I would take my camera and I would go like use Google Meets, and I would open up my camera and would do the experiment so they could be a part of it. And it was more refreshing for me. So I had some kind of vetting that I wasn't altering any results, like these people were seeing it as I was doing it as well. And the road one was a big one that I did, because we always thought that if she had been attacked on the side of the road, especially at Cuss, and she had laid, because in her reenactment, if she's been bloodied on the ground by an instrument and she's bleeding out, she would have laid there. So I put my blood on a road surface like Cuss, the gravel, the rocks, the sand, and I wanted to see, and I started the process of capturing over, I think it was 5 days we did CAF of just every day. I then made it rain, and by making it rain, I got out there with a hose because of all the things that were happening in that week of the Avery Salvage Yard. It rained, so I had to expose the road to rain, because that would have been a fair part of the experiment. It was exposed. I had to have all these exposures. So I did, and I was actually quite shocked that I think the conclusion we were all quite shocked at was it would have been unmissable. If you were all at Cuss and she had laid there, even in that week duration with rain, sun, shine, unless something actually covered in terms of like snow or something foreign over the road, you wouldn't not see it. It was always visible to the eye. And this was only a few drops, let alone it being a puddle if it had come from her head or an injury that was more open and had more excess blood coming out. So that was definitely an experiment. And then the Cuss Road, because a lot of us have considered that Cuss Road was a dumping ground, perhaps whether it was her electronics, whether it was something to do with her body. Regardless, I wanted to see if her body had laid there, when again, this is disclaimer because it is a little bit graphic, but when you pass away, you go into decomposition immediately. Your body will start breaking down the gases and you will start to bloat. You will go through the stages of death, which is like your livity and then your rigor mortis and all those stages. And so this is what and then especially being out in the elements, it could break down a lot quicker. And then you have the wildlife, you have the potential, and that's why I used to ask people, what kind of, exposure would her body have got towards like the animals out there? Because if there's bears, hell, a smell of a decompositioning body could bring in animals to feed, wolves and all these things. Mine in Australia was ants. Ants came and absolutely shredded my crime scene of my blood. They actually came in within 10 minutes and they took over. They were walking through all my blood. And I was like saying to Kath, I said, holy shit, this is why we have issues with like dog scents, because we have ants, a whole colony of the bastards walking through my blood and they're walking across the road. There goes a scent trail.
Wow.
And there's a scent right there. Wow. You have just created a scent trail from fucking ants, man.
That's
from my
crazy.
blood.
That is some crazy stuff that I would have never thought of.
And then the other one, which was really interesting, was I was so excited about this. I think Kath thought I needed a pebble in my head at this stage. Was after I'd done the experiment, I found beside the drop there was this pebble. Like this little stone from the road, and it was there. It was just sitting there very loosely. But to my surprise, it was soaked in blood. And I was like, holy shit, I reckon I could literally pick this up right now. I could probably take it to the end of the street, put it in the park. And if we got the dog scent here, like dogs that, scent for blood and my blood, especially if I went missing, they would find that. They would have they'd pick up that pebble, and then I was like, it opened me up to all these narratives and these possibilities, like winds, and again, your ants and your animals. But it just, again, the experiments taught me a lot, and I'm very, very open to say that people are like, well, what's your conclusion? As much as it hurts me to say, I don't have one. All I really wanted to do for the experiments was to learn. I wanted to learn for myself, to understand what could have happened. And I was just learning as I went along, and I took a few people on the journey with me, which I'm now getting the opportunity to start sharing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was so interesting.
The blood work is some interesting stuff, and I just feel like the point that was kind of made in the chat, that that I made the comment that you can't half-ass this. You can't just hopefully this will work, and I'll frame Stephen, and it'll move it. You know what it will do? It will move the evidence away from me, the real killer, and towards Stephen Avery. Like, you can't half-ass that. You have to be really good, and you have to know how to work with blood, and you have to. It just screams law enforcement, people that have been trained in how to at least blood collection, and blood collection is the first half of blood planting, right? So, and they have the tools. So. It does continue, and I think you brought up that question, in the last couple podcasts, and I'm sorry to have this harsh reality, but you can't have it both ways. Well, I guess you can have it both ways. It's true, but most likely, if you can't. Either law enforcement planted the blood or the killer planted the blood. You can't have it both ways, and and that's the stark reality that you have to get with. And in the last podcast, the level of DNA found on the key, right on the key, was too high. It was insanely high, the amount that should have been transferred, just beyond, right? So that leads towards law enforcement. A killer can't do that. A killer can't replicate too much DNA. That's something that's, again, maybe done in a lab. And I think that's where I'm at recently, that it just keeps kind of angling towards the laboratory. And again, not accusing anyone of anything.
Yeah, that's fair. And here's one thing that I will say, that I can say with a bit of more confidence, okay? This is what I get asked in terms of the comparison. Now, I'm not trying to light up the whole EDTA argument, because I know a lot of people accept that may be over, being the fact that, the new testing that's coming from Kathleen. But I just want to, but here, I just want to bring in the perspective and like the comparison, because I think it's fair for people to understand it. They both, so fresh blood and EDTA blood both flake the same. So when you get to the last stage of your coagulation stage of your cycles, they both end up the same way. So they both flake and dry out the same. However, EDTA takes a lot longer. So that's one thing that I can say confidently that was very significant in terms of an outcome of that. Secondly, EDTA blood can be used with distilled water and tap water, and both effectively be rehydrated. However, fresh blood, you cannot use fresh water. It does not work. The compounds in the fresh water break down your blood too much, and like all the minerals and stuff, the zinc and all that will just flush it all down. However, distilled water is the only water that can rehydrate fresh blood. So that was two things that I found really interesting. So EDTA has a longer life, and it can be rehydrated with the right kind of quantity of distilled and fresh, where fresh blood, my apology, is only distilled water. You can't add fresh. It's just way too heavy. It's just really odd. And what else was there about the comparisons? I mentioned that they both flake the same. The time duration is definitely different. I found that EDT. Oh, okay. And when I say, so the 5 stages, EDTA takes longer. But then when you go past that and it's at the flaky dry stage, EDTA will last fresher for days, where fresh blood has a shorter lifespan, where you will start to see the iron breaking down and your blood will turn brown a lot quicker. And that's usually within the first, I want to say this, by the 3rd day, the discoloration has definitely transformed in fresh blood. You can already see that change, where EDTA blood, it holds it a little bit longer. That saturation of redness and deepness, it just holds it for an extra day or 2. It's actually quite interesting. And that's why when I was doing all my experiments and I made sure that I used an aqua hard plastic kind of fabric to put all my thing on to mimic the car, I was trying to capture it, because this is going to sound really, really bizarre. And I know I've said it before, but it really goes back to your basic color charts, like your primary school shit. Like, you know, blue and yellow makes green and blue and red makes purple. And I found that fresh blood on black turned it bloody white once it dried out. So I couldn't use my car anymore because the color was going all funny. So so I had to really try to make sure I balanced out that saturation of colors as best I could and mimic what I could. So, sorry, I have to mute. Someone's at my door.
No, it's okay. That's what happens. Unless anybody has any comments to what Cal said, I think it's pretty thorough. I do have another clip ready. Unless, Jack, you have something?
Yeah, it's after midnight for me, and I'm gonna have to go. I'm sorry, I'm beat.
No, that's totally cool, man. Actually, I mean, we could just wrap it up here.
I'm definitely happy to wrap it up here. I've got a guest that's just arrived unannounced, so I kind of have to fly.
Let's just wrap it up. Yeah, let's just wrap it up then, folks. It's, I wish we could go longer. It's been great. You guys have been awesome. I really appreciate going through this together. And
happy 1 year.
Yeah.
Happy 1 year.
Yeah, well done, guys.
Absolutely, you guys. Really appreciate that. Kath, do you have anything to add before we go?
No, I don't. But I'd like to just thank everyone for coming and listening, and everyone for hanging in there and, supporting the boys in jail. And, yeah, just keep up the good work. You guys have done so well over the last 12 months. Like, I think, right from the get-go, if you're new to the case, I'd just recommend going back to your #1 video and just watching all of them through if you want to, have a speedy knowledge of the case.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks everyone.
I think that's just capturing what Kath said, because she said it so perfectly, and it kind of ties back to us when we went into the introduction of this when we first started. When you asked, like when we started brainstorming, Jeff, when you brought forward this whole MAM experience and what we were trying to get out of it. And I think, if I remember correctly, one of us said, we want to be able to make it somewhere that if you're new to the case, it's somewhere where you can go, and because there's so much information out there, we make it as simple as it can be for people to catch up to where we're at now, to add in everything that's out there into the now, yet follow where it was then. I just wanted to add that. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for always listening, all the support. Thank you, Jeff, for allowing me in. Happy 1 year to everyone, and goodbye from me.
Bye, Cal.
Well, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate that. Fantastic live, and we will do it again in 2 weeks. So for the whole crew, thank you, Kath.
Night, Jack.
Yep. Good night. Yep. Thanks for hanging
Good
there,
night,
buddy.
everybody. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Johnny B. Good night.
Good night, John Boy.
Good night, John Boy. Have a great one, guys. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
See you guys.